I will call to order the regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission for June 27th, 2018. If you will all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Ms. Navarez, will you call roll, please?
Chair Longstreet.
Here.
Vice Chair Clark. Commissioner Armbruster. Commissioner Lesner-Buxton.
Here.
Commissioner Martinez-Cohen. Commissioner McGill. Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Okay, are there any changes to the agenda? Nothing, okay. Written communications, we all received a letter from Bob Cunningham on the Street Tree Advisory Council, so I bring that to your attention. Any other written comment or written communications, Ms. Zachary? All righty, that brings us to public comment. Any member of the public may address the commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction of the commission that is not scheduled for a public discussion before the commission. Total amount of time is 15 minutes. Mr. Locke, would you come up and join us? Good afternoon.
Thank you. My name is Kenneth Locke. I went before the Arts Commission, City Council, School Board last time they met, and I'm pushing the whole idea of interdisciplinary, and also with the arts, spirituality, as well as with athletics also. When it comes to the camps that you have running, that you have contracted, there's not one that actually focuses on interdisciplinary, say, education or the interdisciplinary or multidiscipline approach. They're actually specialized. So we can understand, again, there's no half interdisciplinary. So the idea that there's not one camp that has that approach. And also the connection, none of the camps are based on integrating the children's minds with their bodies, the basis of what a mind-body exercise is, and the basis of actually increasing a child's mental health and physical health. And also, right now there's a tennis swim kind of program that they have. Again, that's specialized. Tennis in this community is being taught as a sport. And I got the bad job to actually explain that it actually compromises a person's mental and physical, spiritual health. And let's see, just want to make kind of people aware of the fact that we need to get to this interdisciplinary approach. You know, we have UCSB has a department, the CC has a building, but see if there's anything else. Mind, body, complete knowledge, complete exercise. I'm down at Muni pretty much every morning with 2 rackets in my hand, developing myself. I have a living practice with it. Just thought I'd share that with you today. Have a good day.
You too. Thank you very much. And with that, I see no other slips for public comment. We will close public comment. And that brings us to the Youth Council report.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, we have Nathaniel Gattacho who's going to give today's presentation.
Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So I'll just get right into my report. So 3 of our youth council members have graduated this year. One of those is Jensen Steady. He was the council member that was coming and reporting before me. But with that, I believe yesterday 4 new youth council members were appointed, which is really good. We're still lacking in private school applicants. So that's something that next year we're going to be pushing to try to find more applicants from private schools. But yeah, so now that it's the summer, I think overall, if we reflect on our year as a council, it was pretty successful. We had our mayoral candidates forum in the fall, which had a lot of turnout and a lot of positive reviews. We also had our teen leadership conference last month with PAL, FLA, and Koya. I don't know if any of you guys were there. again, a lot of positive reviews. One of the main ideas at the conference was this idea. It's actually a hashtag on like social media. It's called "What's Next." So it's like what's next for things like gun control, for things like teen mental health, and that was like the overarching idea for the entire conference, and it's something that we're going to go forward with next year. Another project that we had was we created a no smoking public service a PSA. We worked with Tony Ruggieri on City TV, and it's now airing on TV thanks to Brandon Dowing from KSBY, Eric Davis at TVSB, and again, Tony, thank you for, or I guess it's like televised, but
He's here somewhere.
he's here somewhere. Yeah, but yeah, thanks to them, we now have a PSA, which was pretty successful. One thing I think I mentioned this last meeting is that as a council, we partnered with the Coalition Against Gun Violence. Given what's happened this year, we thought it was important to address gun violence in our communities, especially with youth in high school, given what's happened at San Marcos as well. Yeah, that's really all I have for this report. We have a meeting on July 16th. So, yeah. And also next year we'll be hopefully working with you guys a little closer than just, the annual reports, maybe more one-on-one or something like that.
Great. Maybe at our next meeting, we could show the PSA during the Youth Council report. That would be really interesting to get it out here so we all see it.
Yeah.
I also understand the city received $878,000 grant for the no smoking, and some other issues go with it, right? But congratulations to the Youth Council, because I know you play a great part in bringing these ideas forward and helping the city move things along. So congratulations on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
If you need any help reaching out to private schools next year, I'd be happy to sit down and talk with you about it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Have a good
Thank you.
summer, and wish all your graduates the best of luck in their future.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Commissioner committee assignment reports. We'll start with you, Commissioner Perry.
Unfortunately, I was not able to make arts and crafts this month, but in their usual form, there's been a lot of correspondence going back and forth, and I'm sure they'll find solutions.
Good. Mr. Lesnar Buxton.
Yes. In early June, I attended the Youth Council and the Youth Celebration, which was a great event, and we start again in July, and I'm really happy to be helping.
Thank you. Ms. Clark.
I attended the Street Tree Advisory Committee the first Thursday of this month, where we discussed and visited trees on our agenda later today. And unfortunately, I was unable to attend the Park Foundation meeting this month.
Thank you. And I have nothing to report. Ms. Zachary, did you want to bring us up to date on the budget, how the budget's gone forward?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, yes, the City Council adopted the budget for fiscal year 2019 on June 19th at their June 19th meeting. Some of the things that we talked with the Commission about related to our capital budget, which is really our operating budget, moved forward as proposed. So all of the things related to programs and services and operations are as proposed. Some of the changes, and I'll just give you a quick reminder. I'll start with the capital, what was approved. So we asked for funding to carry on with a number of projects that are underway. So, for example, we asked for an additional $135,000, which is what we think we need to fully fund the new off-leash dog area at Mackenzie Park, which we anticipate construction will begin in August or perhaps early September. So that's moving forward. We also asked for some funds for Franceschi Park. As you recall, we took sort of the proposal to come up with an alternative to the house and a master plan update $250,000 to move that forward. We asked for additional funds to keep the Ortega Park master planning process going forward, and that was approved. And then lastly, the West Beach wading pool, which you'll have a presentation as part of your special meeting tonight, which is more the splash playground. We asked for some additional funds because through our preliminary review realized that we needed a little bit more money to get through final design and permitting, in part because we anticipate we'll need to have a restroom on site for that facility. The changes related to some key capital projects that we've been working on really relate to the Davis Center. As you know, we have just completed our final plans. We're pretty much could be ready to go to build that project in fiscal year 19. We had requested some funds from Measure C for that project. In light of the fact that there is some discussion that that property could be the future site of a new police station for the city, Council chose to hold on allocating any funds for that renovation project pending the review and selection of potential sites. So it's on hold. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It's just one of those things that they wanted to wait until that work effort was completed. I believe they anticipate that work effort will take 3 or 4 months, and that'll be any further discussion of the location will be part of public hearings and discussion, and be happy to keep you up to date on that. I would add that a little bit of Measure C funding has been allocated to help offset the lost revenue from the Cabrillo Pavilion renovation. That's about $128,000. And then through the Measure C process, since the Public Works Department is moving forward with a number of sidewalk and parkway improvements, we are also going to be working with them to plant some new trees associated with those improvements. So funds are being allocated for that purpose, which is very much needed, as you know, since with the drought, we've lost many trees, and we believe strongly that it's time to start replanting them, and to do so in conjunction with street improvements makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Yes, I think it's important that we stay in the loop as far as how that's moving forward for the new police station. I mean, obviously, it is a community benefit, and we get that, but we should be informed of it and of the process, because as I understand it, if it's changed from parkland, dedicated parkland, it requires a vote of the people, whether they're looking at keeping part of it parkland to avoid. It just needs. We need to know. So thank you very much for keeping us informed on that. And now, if we have no other commission and staff communications, we are on to ceremonial items. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet, members of the commission, first and foremost want to acknowledge that Simone Herrera, who is a park supervisor with our department, was recognized for 5 years of service. So Simone came to us to work at our golf course, and with the transition to a private operator, he came over to our parks division, and he's been working as a park supervisor there. So we're very happy that Simone is still with us, and want to congratulate him on his 5 years of service with the city.
Definitely. Congratulations.
And then for the commission, you've heard this via email and perhaps had a few conversations. We had the opportunity to recognize Santos Escobar for his 25 years of service a few months ago. He has tendered his intent to retire from the city, and he will be retiring effective July 6th. We have a barbecue planned for him on that day, and I hope that you're all able to attend. Wanted to take this opportunity to allow the commission to make any remarks on Santos's behalf, and then also to acknowledge publicly in this format the tremendous contribution that Santos has provided to the city throughout his career, beginning as a grounds maintenance worker, as he likes to talk about, and all the way through his most recent tenure as the parks manager. I've had a great opportunity to work with Santos for 17 of those years, which is really hard to believe once I start looking back. Then you look at photos and you go, oh, yes, that's right. And to be honest, I am very, very sorry that he's leaving, but very, very happy for him and his family, because everybody needs to have the opportunity to move on to whatever next phase in their life. The community has benefited tremendously from his dedication, as have his co-workers, his colleagues, the people that he's trained and brought up through the organization. We've been through some pretty awful times. We've also had some tremendous successes. And I look at Santos and consider Santos one of my mentors at the city. So I wanted to give you the opportunity as well, in this forum and any other forum you choose, to wish Santos well.
Okay. Ms. Clark, did you want to start?
So one of the first people I met when I became a commissioner was Santos, and he just made me feel so included and tried to keep me in the loop and inform me of what this department was all about. I will always be grateful for that. But I have nothing to say that's nearly as significant what you've given to our city. So thank you. Please stay.
Mr. Perry.
I don't know who haunted the other more, but between my 15 years with Fiesta and Mercados and dealing with landscaping and grass and sprinklers, I had a lot of fun working with Santos. He definitely takes his job seriously and cares about our city. Thank you for all you've done.
Mr. Lesnar Buxton.
Thank you so much. You have taught me a lot, and I really appreciate your work with the city.
Well, I've been thinking about how do you say what Santos does, and I just don't think there are enough words to say. He knows where all the valves are, where every tree is. He knows everything about our parks, and he cares deeply. And, you know, he's the guy that's out there on the weekends. He leads volunteer activities. He's patient with all of us to make sure that we know what's going on. I think the one that stands out in my mind is when we went through the IPM, and that was tough. There was resistance. It cost us money that we didn't have at the time. It was the right thing to do, but it meant we really had to change our whole way of thinking about our parks and maintenance. And our parks workers take pride in our parks, and they had to let some of that go for health reasons. And Santos led the way, and he led other departments, and he took that on, and he made it a very successful cooperative program within the city. And I think that just speaks to how he has always done his job. And what will be missing is that cooperative ability to make sure that things happen and things happen correctly. And I just appreciate him so much. We will miss him. Obviously, you're not falling off the face of the earth, and we expect to see you around, but just thank you for everything. I remember when you took me up after the tea fire to show me what had happened up in the park and how the preparatory work had saved the houses and what was coming back already. It was a week after the tea fire, and you know, it brought it home. It made it real for me, and you were very good at doing that, I think, for all of us. So thank you very much, Santos. We'll miss you, and I'll see you at your barbecue. We'll celebrate some more. Did you want to say anything? No. Because we would love to hear from you.
Well, thank you so very much, Chair and Commissioners. I really appreciate this. I will tell you that I am a Parks and Recreation baby because I learned how to swim at the plunge. I played championship baseball at McKenzie Ballfield when back in the day when I was a youngster, I actually saw when the first scoreboard went up. How's that for institutional memory? I played flag football. I played basketball. I actually played at Carrillo Recreation Center up on top of
The good old days.
The good old days. I do remember Mr. Richard Johns and my father talking and being left at the Carrillo Recreation Center as I walked in to go play basketball and such, and played inside that gym down below and did that. I never did take any dance lessons, though.
Oh, you have time now. You're retiring. We'll see you in the next solstice break.
Those types of things. I did learn how to do lots of arts and crafts projects because of what is now known the AOK program. Because I did graduate from Harding School. I am a Harding Hawk. So all those types of good things and all those memories. So there's that. And, overall, I am truly blessed to actually work for the Parks and Recreation Department and actually become the parks manager. That was never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that was possible. I did want to become a park supervisor and do that job well, and I got to do that. I got to become the golf course superintendent for close to a year, so that was quite exciting. So anyways, it's been fun, and like Jill said, yeah, we had a lot of great memories, great times. We did a lot of good projects, and we did at times have a couple bumps in the road, but that's to be expected. That's all part of life. And I will miss you, but this is my hometown. I will not be going anywhere, and I do thank you for, once again, for the kind words. So thank you so very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So now we are on to consent items. Summary of council actions. Does anyone have any questions or any comments? Ms. Zachary?
Commissioner Longstreet, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, just one little bit of additional information. You mentioned it earlier in the meeting about the tobacco grant, anti-tobacco grant. It's actually for $878,000. And of those funds, a good portion of those funds go toward volunteers to do education in the downtown. There's also support for the police department for extra hours. But as part of that, signage is very important in a lot of different ways. There'll be street signage, facility signage. And of those funds, $90,000 will go towards our implementation of the new park signage. You recall we've been working on our park signs for quite some time. The project's been on a little bit of a hold, but we're ready to get it going again. So $90,000 will go towards making that a reality, which is a huge help. And obviously it's all the signs that include the regulatory information that city parks and recreation facilities are now smoke-free.
That's excellent. Other questions or comments?
If we're ever lacking agenda items, I would be interested in having Explore Ecology talk to us a little bit about what they do. If we're ever lacking agenda items, I would be interested in having Explore Ecology talk to us about what they do. I know they're very big in the community, but I don't remember them coming before us.
Okay. And that brings us to the minutes for Wednesday, May 23rd. So the three of you were here.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And all abstain? I will say I did watch the meeting. It was very good. And now we are on to trees. Mr. Downey.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the first item is 105 Calle Bello. The property owner there has quite a little forest in that corner. One of the eucalyptus trees proposed for removal, the one that has 3 trunks, is right on the edge of a drainage that allows water to drain underneath Calle Bello. and in fact, it's showing signs that it might be damaging that inlet. The other eucalyptus on the left side in this picture is another one that overhangs the road a little bit and is on the other side of that inlet. And the Mexican fan palm that you see just to the right of the right eucalyptus is right on the edge of the sidewalk. The property owner is a little concerned after the fires with the eucalyptus in the area. He states he's got a neighbor that has fallen trees and quite the forest. He's wanting to thin out the herd a little bit on his property. He's not completely denuding the area, so he wants to remove the 2 eucalyptus and 1 Mexican fan palm. The committee reviewed those and felt that there wasn't going to be any impacts to the neighborhood. So the recommendation is to approve the removals as proposed.
Thank you. Are there questions of Mr. Downey? A motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the setback tree removal request at 105 Calle Bello, including the Mexican fan palm and the 2 eucalyptus.
Second.
Okay, any discussion of the motion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Now, the next item we're going to look at the trees, and then we're going to hear our presentation, correct, Ms. Zachary, from the Creeks Division on the entire project, and we will vote on the trees at the end of that presentation. Okay?
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, the Creeks Division of Parks and Recreation Department is proposing to do a restoration project in the creek adjacent to Hidden Valley. Well, it goes through Hidden Valley Park, specifically in the section between Calle de los Amigos and Torino Drive. There are several non-native trees, in fact invasive trees, within the creek. And they're proposing to remove those trees as part of a restoration project. We'll go into the details when Mr. Burgess does his presentation, but the committee felt that this was a valuable project to the community, and getting those non-native invasive trees out of the creek was commendable. The project is proposing a replacement of 465 trees for these 18 trees that they're proposing to remove. Committee was overzealous about what an exciting project. And with that, I'm going to give it to Mr. Burgess to do his presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Burgess.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, Chair Longstreet and Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present this project. I'll be giving a brief presentation on the Arroyo Burro Restoration at Hidden Valley project. The project is located in the lower Arroyo Burro watershed on an open space parcel between Calle de los Amigos and Torino Drive. That's in the Hidden Valley neighborhood. And this is upstream of the Arroyo Burro open space parcel and downstream of Modoc Road and Highway 101. The parcel is it's on a 10-acre city-owned parcel that's a portion of the Hidden Valley Open Space Park, and the actual restoration area is 2.8 acres, and that's along a 1,500-foot reach of Arroyo Burro. The park has an open space designation, but it also has a small playground park on the west side of the creek at Torino Drive. So the open space area is characterized by a mature and diverse native plant community, and then along with those native plants, there are invasive ivies and other non-native ground cover that have established and have been increasingly gaining a foothold on the ground and really displacing native plants in that area. There also, along that reach of creek, on the banks, there are remnants of pipe and wire revetment system that was put in for bank stabilization during the 60s and 70s. and much of that pipe and wire revetment is failing and breaking apart. And in some areas, it's actually causing bank erosion because it's diverting the creek water kind of up into the banks. So for the project elements, we're proposing to remove 450 feet of this pipe and wire revetment. That's not all of it. There's about 650 feet of it total. And where we remove the pipe and wire, we plan to install biotechnical bank stabilization, and that includes core logs, which are kind of short-term bank stabilization, and then also plant native trees and plants whose root systems will provide bank stabilization in the long term. As Tim mentioned, the part of this restoration is to remove 18 non-native trees. That includes 14 chamois ash, which are an invasive species. There are only 14 in that area along that reach, and so before they really gain a foothold, we want to remove those 14. They actually occupy a lot of the same habitat that the native white alder does, right on the toe of the bank, and so we plan to replace them with a lot of native trees, which I'll get into. And then also there are 4 blue gum trees on the creek bank. There are a lot of blue gums in the whole area, but we plan to remove 4 of them right on the creek bank. Another aspect of the project is to replace the playground park fence with another one that's a little bit further away from the creek bank. The fence as it stands right now is right on the top of that steep bank, and we were proposing to move that about 10 feet off the bank and move the 2 picnic tables into around the playground in the park. And then the large portion of the project is to remove all of the non-native vegetation. So as I mentioned before, there is an existing native plant community, and in order to remove all this non-native vegetation without damaging the existing trees and plants, we plan to go in and remove them by hand, so that we don't damage those trees, don't damage the root system. We don't plan to do any grading in the area, so the soil will be protected. And then where we remove all of these non-natives, we will be planting over 2,200 native plants. That includes 685 trees. Tim mentioned a 400 number. And he was actually talking about non-willows, over 450 non-willows, and sometimes we separate that out. So the remainder of those to make the 685 is willows. And then to support those native plantings, we will install a temporary irrigation system. In August of 2017, we met with community members during a couple meetings before we got started on design to get community input. And a lot of the input we got was that a lot of the residents there are very, very familiar with this park. They use it a lot. They use the open space area. There's actually a trail that runs through there that people use. They are very endeared to this area. They appreciated all of the wildness of the area. They also appreciated the existing large canopy trees and the native vegetation. They also agreed that the removal of a lot of the non-native vines would be a good thing in helping to get those native plants get a foothold again. We also did a site visit with the Creeks Advisory Council last year as well. We came back in May of this year to the same community spots for community meetings again to go over our concept plans, and we developed those concept plans based on our restoration goals and based on the community feedback that we got during those meetings. And the resounding feedback that we got during this second meeting was that they were appreciative that we took their ideas into our designs, and they're in support of this project as it stands. We also went to the Creeks Advisory Committee in this month. The estimated budget for the project is $265,000, and that includes the pipe and wire revetment removal, the non-native tree removal, removal of the invasive plants by hand, and the native plant installation with the irrigation system to support that, as well as the park improvements for the fence. We are finalizing designs right now, and we expect environmental permitting to be completed in the next few weeks. And we plan to go out to bid next month for an estimated construction start date in August. We expect 2 months for the construction, the hard construction stuff, like the removal of the pipe and wire, things like that. 2 months for the landscaping portion of the project, for completion in November, before the wet season gets started. And then, as with all of our restoration projects, we plan to do long-term maintenance and to support the native plantings and to ensure that the non-natives are kept at bay until those native plants can gain a strong foothold and establish themselves. And that concludes my presentation. Thanks for the opportunity, and I can take any questions if you have any.
Okay, questions for Mr. Burgess?
Why is it important to make a distinction between willows and non-willows?
Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, it's not necessarily important. I was just mentioning that because of the discrepancy between the number of trees that Tim mentioned. I think during the presentation to the Street Tree Advisory Committee, I separated that out. The willows are fast growing. The Aurora willow is not a huge tree. It's not a big canopy tree. So in some restoration projects, we separate that out from like large sycamores, oaks, some of those longer living large trees. And they're trees nonetheless, and just as important. But I just thought I'd mention that because of the different numbers.
Other questions or comments? Go on. Go ahead.
When it gets to making sure that the non-natives don't reestablish down the line, who does that work? Is it Creeks Department people or Parks people?
The Creeks Division will be will handle that long-term maintenance for the project area. Yeah, and we have that in our budget to do that.
I liked the schedule. Sounds like you'll start probably late August. Then is that what you're anticipating after school gets back in session? And
yeah, I imagine mid-August. We don't have an exact date.
Yeah, school
yet.
starts like August 20 something. Sounds like you're going pretty quickly on this, but it's always nice when we're not tearing the parks up during the summer when the kids are out of school.
That's a good point.
Yeah, so I liked that it was late. It would be mid to late August. That's a good timing. We just hate to see that happen. Other questions? Okay, so now we have heard the project is here just for comments, which it looks like it's starting to connect a lot of that watershed. It's nice to see the projects moving through that area, and I think when you're able to do the lower end there, it's going to be a nice run and really an improvement, hopefully, to water quality. So thank you very much for all that you do to get these things going. So that brings us to the trees, back to the trees. So we have a request for removal of 18 trees and a recommendation from STAC that go forward. Any comments or questions on that?
My only comment is it's 18 trees that we're taking away, but they're also planting 685.
It's a tremendous amount. I'm not exactly. I got to go over there and see where you're going to put 685.
Well, some
I think that's
some
great.
of them are willows and they're little.
Yeah, but that's great. So, do I have a motion to concur with this recommendation?
I will make a motion that the commission approves the removal of the 18 trees, including 14 Fraxinus odi and 4 Eucalyptus globulus at the Hidden Valley Park /open space.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much. We're excited to see another project go in. Thank you. All right. And that now we are at our director's report. Ms. Zachary. We're
Chair
rocking.
Longstreet and Commissioners, the report focuses largely on the ever popular and wonderful Concerts in the Park series, which starts up again right after the 4th of July. You have our promotional materials that we handed out to you. It is our 19th summer season, and as you know, it's very popular. We estimated 25,000 people enjoyed the concert series last year. We're hopeful that will be the same. The way the weather's been going this summer, it could be just a really wonderful time to be out in a city park and close to the beach and enjoying some really good music. They run from the 5th all the way to the 26th, which is good timing because Fiesta's right after that, and then the summertime is almost over, which is hard to believe because it was just the solstice parade. We have a number of sponsors: Armstrong Associates, the Santa Barbara Independent, K-Light, Santa Barbara Ski Club, Santa Barbara Blues Society, and the Forster Group at Morgan Stanley. It's not in your staff report, but that's another sponsor that just came forward. So they're important to the success of this event. Mostly fundraise. We do pass the hat, and folks that are there often can contribute as well, and we appreciate that as well. The Park Foundation holds the funds for this event. Another example of how we work hand in hand with the Park Foundation to allow folks to support activities in our parks and our beaches, and then also be part of the foundation. In fact, use this opportunity to recognize that 4th of July is right around the corner. I think it's this time next week. And Commissioner Perry's been involved again this year in raising funds for the music and some of the food vendors and activities, and that helps support the city's efforts. So I want to acknowledge him for that work. What we don't have on your agenda, and you will receive on your staff report, and you'll receive some updates from staff. You have your special meeting today at 6 o'clock to go over Bonnet Park and the West Beach Splash Play area with the Neighborhood Advisory Council. In July, we also have a second round of community meetings, neighborhood meetings for the Ortega Park Master Plan and the Dwight Murphy Master Plan. The Dwight Murphy one is on July 10th, and it's at, I believe, 5:30. I need to double check, but we'll get you an email that gives you the update. And then Ortega is on July 12th. So we're moving forward pretty rapidly. You'll have another special meeting in August to look at those projects. So just want you to know those are the things that are happening in July. Even though it's the summer, even though summer camp is in full swing, even though everybody's busy, we really wanted to advance those projects because they will be key discussion items for the commission when we come to you in the fall and start talking about our next 6-year capital program. The idea is that we're advancing the designs and the permitting for these projects so that when we get to discussing long-term capital, the commission can help the city, staff, and council prioritize which ones we try to move forward with and which ones we look for funding for. So that's essentially it for your report. And let me just add one more thing. At council yesterday, they approved the construction contract for the Arroyo Burro Creek Restoration project at the open space. That's something that Creeks Division brought to you a number of months ago. That project will be moving forward to construction in July, and we'll be having a meeting with the neighbors right before that begins so they have a sense of what the impacts will be, short-term impacts to their neighborhood as we move forward with that. That'll be really exciting to watch, and something for the commission to think about would be a site visit at some point where it makes sense to see how things are going. And then lastly, just as looking forward, we have a request for the PSA from the Youth Council. Also Explore Ecology, we can certainly put that on the calendar. And then we'll come forward with a status report on the Cabrillo Pavilion. We have some interesting images to show you as that project moves forward. We've started hard hat tours with potential donors, and you can start feeling how it's going to be when it's done, even though we still have another year of construction to go.
I watched the capital discussion about many of these planning projects. And there were some questions from council about why we were putting money into planning. And the one thing that came to my mind is that each of these projects that we're looking at, especially places like Bonet and Ortega Park, are requested by the community. They're needed by the community. And that I would like to convey to council that that's what drives these projects. There was a lot, there was a lot of talk about funding, and you did a great job of explaining how having them ready to go means we can apply for funding from other agencies. But the piece that really is important for me is we have people living around parks, using parks, that are requesting more. And that's who we're here to serve. So as we go forward, I think that's what I'd like the council to keep in mind, is that our parks are for everybody. Thank you. That's my soapbox for the day as I get older and crankier. And now we are to Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Subcommittee appointment. It just keeps giving.
Chair Longstreet and Commissioners, I have some brief remarks that I'm making on behalf of the Planning Division. This is their project.
Right.
A number of you, including Commissioner Clark and Chair Longstreet, were involved in the local coastal plan update. That's almost wrapped up, at least in terms of council approval, and moving on to the Coastal Commission. The Planning Division also successfully secured some grant funds to do a sea level rise adaptation plan, which is kind of this unknown for now, and it's a placeholder in the LCP. They are moving forward with it. They've got a consultant on board to do a lot of the technical work. They are looking for participation on a subcommittee that would include council members, a Parks and Rec Commissioner, Harbor Commissioner, and Planning Commission to work with them as they move forward to help with sort of the review and the technical considerations. There'll be a lot of policy discussions around planning for the future and what the options are. And so they'd like the commission to appoint one person to serve on that subcommittee. I don't know that they have a lot of details on when the meetings will be held, but they're usually a couple of hours long. I know they try very hard to schedule them at a time when the most number of committee members can participate. I believe last go around where it was on Wednesdays, perhaps, that those meetings
But
occurred.
during business hours.
During business hours, exactly. So that's something to consider. I'd like to take back your appointment for the Planning Division to move forward.
I would like to ask Ms. Clark if you would continue. I believe it would be better if one of us who served continued, because we have some knowledge of the committee, and that seems to be where they're going with it, unless one of you has an overwhelming desire to do this. But I would like to ask you if you would continue on, and I would back you up.
I could continue on with your backup in the event that they're on Mondays, because I'm not ever available on a Monday. They said Monday and Wednesday here. So that's my concern, is we don't know exactly what day it's going to be, so it's hard to make that commitment.
Well, let's work it out that it'll be Nicole with me backing her up. And that way we'll have the history.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of this agenda, correct, Ms. Zachary?
That's correct.
So
we have a little break.
We'll have a recess until we reconvene with the Neighborhood Advisory Council at 6 o'clock.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The Recreation Commission and the Neighborhood Advisory Council for June 27th, 2018. Will you do roll call, Ms. Navarez? We're waiting to come up.
Parks and Recreation Commission, Chair Longstreet,
Here.
Vice Chair Clark, Commissioner Armbruster, Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, Commissioner Martinez Cohen, Commissioner McGill, Commissioner Perry.
Here.
Okay, Neighborhood Advisory Council, Sebastian Aldana, Jacqueline Barrios, Sally Foxon, Brittany Heaton, Bibi Longstreet,
Here.
Stacy Lyden, May O'Mahony, Reman Kadri, Hector Sanchez, Eve Sanford.
Okay, thank you. Before we move any further, we're going to do just a couple of housekeeping issues since this is a joint meeting and the NAC is not usually with us. We will be sharing mics. To remind everybody, the meeting is televised, so you must speak into the microphone and make sure it's on with the green light when speaking. That is also true for anyone at public comment. Make sure that you're televised. We will go down the line for questions since there's so many of us. We'll just start at one end and go down, and I'll alternate. Sally, you won't always have to be first. Tonight we'll have the presentation on each one of the projects. We will then have commission and council questions. Then we'll open public comment. After public comment, we will have commission and council comments on the projects. There's not any action we need to take tonight. It's to receive the project and the public comment on it. And that is, I think, all of our housekeeping issues. The speaker slips I did announce earlier, but for anybody that came in later, if you would like to speak to this item, please fill out a speakership slip in the back. And you can put both items, and we'll call you during each presentation. So, thank you. So, with that, we will open public comment on any item that is not on the agenda tonight. You can speak up to 2 minutes. And we have not received any public comment speaker slips, so we will close public comment. And now we are to our Bonet Park renovation project. Ms. Zachary.
Chair Longstreet, commissioners, committee members, thank you all for coming together for this joint special meeting. It's a great opportunity to bring two bodies that are important to our department as we move forward with any number of projects, programs, initiatives. So we look forward to your consideration, questions, and discussion on these projects. We've spoken to both groups about them. So we're at an exciting point where we've done some conceptual planning, had community meeting. It's your opportunity to weigh in, give us your feedback. As we move forward, you'll hear more about these in the future. Ultimately, our goal with these projects is to queue them up from a design and concept standard so that as we move forward and we look for funds to build them, we have a really good idea of what the community wants. In addition to myself, Justin Van Mullum, who's a project planner for the department, is going to be leading the staff effort, and we have consultants from SWA who are working with us on the project. I'd also just note that there are a couple of other staff in the audience, Judith McCaffrey, Santos Escobar, and Rich Hanna. So if there are any questions of staff related to anything that might come outside of this presentation, we're also here and can answer your questions. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin, and we'll move forward. We'll do Bonet first, and then we'll get down to the West Beach Splash Play area. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission and Council. I'm here to give you a presentation on Bonet Park renovation project. Here is an aerial photograph showing the park at the corner of Anapamu Street and San Pasqual. The yellow dashed area delineates the area of improvement. The park is actually larger and crosses Old Mission Creek, and there's a pocket park right in this location that fronts on San Andreas Street. At the corner of Anapamu is a large building that is leased to the United Boys and Girls Club, which provides services to children from ages 5 to 18. In the area of improvement, there are amenities that include the basketball court, a small restroom, playground, and picnic area. Project goals include expanding the recreation opportunity of the park, promoting and maintaining park safety, and upgrading park infrastructure. As you can see in the photo to the right, there are ramps and service access that could be upgraded to meet accessibility. And then also to improve the much-used picnic area and sports court, renew turf fields and landscaping, and improve active recreation for children and adults. Thus far, we have hired SWA Group in April of this year, and that was due to their extensive experience with urban parks. SWA sat down with the Parks and Recreation Department to create a concept plan, which we later used in May at a community outreach workshop. This workshop was noticed with 800 bilingual direct mailers and signs posted at the site. We had 14 participants, some which I see in the audience. And then we went back out to the site on a weekend, on a Sunday in the afternoon, and we interviewed 60 park users and confirmed the input that we received at the workshop. Today, we're here to present a revised concept plan. That plan includes the input that we received at the workshop. And then our next steps include the design review process. That will be later this year, and also an environmental review. And then early 2019, we're expecting to submit for building permits. I'd like to now hand it over to SWA partner and from the Los Angeles office, Ing-Yu Hung, and she's here with her associate, Jana Wiebe, who's been working on the project as well.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Ing-Yu. So we're here to kind of walk you through the concept for Bonnet Park. And if we could move on to the next slide. Yep. So when we first visited the site, our first kind of gut feeling about this project was really it's a park, it's a community park, and it really, as such, it should really serve the neighborhood and the residents surrounding this, within this community. And so we noticed that there were lots of activities going on in the park, and some of which are actually really interesting to watch, you know, such as the basketball court that was being played in the late evenings, way into the night. It's a very well-used park to the point that it actually appears kind of tired because it gets used in so many different ways. And then, so we think this park really, in addition to being kind of a sports-related park, that it really ought to host a variety of different uses that the community really desires and desperately need. Next slide. So, so as Justin had already mentioned earlier, the site has its own, pluses and minuses, and the field. Again, it's kind of parched. The grass is really worn out. Next slide. And, one of the amazing features that we noticed was the mural that was on the wall of the Boys and Girls Club. So there's kind of a art component and community participation that's already occurring there. Mission Creek was an amazing, beautiful amenity, although it might pose some challenges as far as safety and accessibility and concerns. Okay, so next slide. So we had gone ahead and done some of the analysis, and I have already mentioned some of those. So some of the constraints having to do with existing utilities. There is a 25-foot buffer, development buffer that we really need to abide to make sure that the creek, we don't encroach into the creek area as far as design is concerned. Next slide. And then the opportunities are quite a few, the amazing sycamore trees along the Mission Creek, and a lot of the picnic tables are located underneath that, and it creates a lot of shade and maturity to this park. Next slide. And then, as Justin had mentioned, we, helped hosting this community meeting back in May, and we understand that the community really like to have the basketball court, for example, but there's also a need for having more picnic areas because it's such a popular amenity, and that people really almost try to fight over it. And there's never enough room during the weekends and late afternoons to host different kinds of birthday parties, family gatherings, and stuff like that. So that's definitely something we need to consider and enhance. Next slide. And the soccer fields was interesting. We had provided a more delineated soccer field layout, but after the community meeting, we understood that people like this flexibility of the open space, so that they don't want to be kind of restricted within the boundary of these fields, and so they like the flexibility, although they do want new turf or grass. And that the big fields has the ability of being used for different purposes, some of which could be volleyball, could be soccer, could be, even bounce houses, picnic tables, and etc. And then there is desire to enhance some of the children's activities as well. Okay. And so fitness areas, it wasn't as much as needed as we thought it would be, although some of the families did state that, for those who are not gym members, having fitness, outdoor fitness stations would be helpful for them. Okay. Next slide. And then picnic areas was a big conversation during that meeting. People wanted more. They wanted bigger tables, medium to large tables. And then they wanted to have these barbecue stations right next to these picnic tables, so they can each, have their own area to host events. And so and then they don't necessarily want to sign up for these reservations. They think it should be first come, first serve. Okay. Next. And then safety was a concern, as much as we think Mission Creek is a kind of a nice natural edge to this site. But as far as what happens at night, and maybe there is a desire for lighting along that edge. Okay. Next. So understanding what the community wanted and taking their points and comments to heart, and we had decided to, decided to refine our original concept. So I'll walk you through the concept. So San Pascual Street is to the north, and the Mission Creek to the south. On the right, we have Boys and Girls Club. So the access is from San Pascual Street, which is what we have currently. And then, so we have extended that access route to make it a little longer and more gentler. Right now, it's a very steep slope, and making it under 5%, it means that we don't need to have an ADA ramp with handrails. And that allows people to actually start coming into park and experiencing the park in a much more, positive way as their first impression. So where you're seeing that pink line, maybe I'll use these laser light. This pink line is starting to talk about there might be a loop, exercising, walking loop surrounding the park. And the material currently probably most likely will be colored concrete or some sort of concrete finish. It's 6 feet wide, so it allows pedestrians and families with kids, baby strollers to come down this path. And then as you come down this path, there's this existing restroom that's going to stay. And then the steps and the small little amphitheater currently is staying as well. We have created additional fitness areas, and these are those outdoor exercising equipments, that adults, parents could use. And then also seating areas along here so that as you're exercising and doing your loop, perhaps you do want to be, using these fitness stations as well. And as you get to this corner, currently there is a little bit of slope coming down, but we are thinking that it's such a nice area that we haven't really taken advantage of. And to create a larger multi-purpose space that's adjacent to the existing playground, so that if additional party events, birthday, whatever happens, we can actually take advantage of this space. And this could be a bounce house, or it could be any other kind of temporary setup for families as well. And then we added additional picnic tables here with barbecue stations. Along the edge here, what you're seeing that gets repeated along this kind of enlarged picnic area, these are actually different material. We haven't solidified the design yet, but potentially these could be gabion walls or stone walls or boulder walls to start creating a low seat wall condition. So first to hold the soil back, and as well to kind of formalize a sociable space here. And so as we keep trucking around forward to the playground area, there's additional seating that's created, because currently there isn't much of a place to sit for parents as they watch their children play. So thinking that the parents could actually have could have a conversation and talk to each other while they watch their kids. So that's really the purpose of this area here. And as you walk towards this bend, we're actually thinking that perhaps there is a way of capturing some of that storm water on site, and then creating some sort of educational component to kind of talk about how the sustainable strategies we can have within this park. And that also relates back to this whole design and purpose of this Mission Creek. That's very much about stormwater filtration, recharge, etc. And then there's a little bridge that crosses over that area, and we come into this much larger picnic area. Right now, the picnic area is very compromised, and it's on, decomposed granite. It's not very well surfaced. So we're thinking of, regrading that area, but we don't want to disturb the existing sycamore trees. So something that's porous material, such as DG, could continue to be used in this area, and having different sizes of picnic tables with barbecue stations, and then opening some of these low seat walls so that there's direct access to the turf field in the middle. So as somebody's playing balls, these edges help to contain the balls from, running into people who are having picnics. So there's different functions for that. So these openings have that function, and then some boulders and gabion walls surrounding this area here. Back to the turf field, again, originally we had kind of created different low fences, and try to really make this a kind of formalized field, but right now we're trying to keep it more or less open so that people, kids could run back and forth. You could have a larger field, or you could have two smaller fields, or there could be a community event that happens here. And as you come back towards the loop, and then there's additional areas here that, again, you could observe a basketball game being played, or futsal, which is a kind of a soccer game that gets played on a hard surface with smaller groups of people. So again, trying to maximize the space that we have available and making this into a really kind of vibrant and functional community park. Next, I think I kind of explained quite a bit. So this is our last perspective to show what it looks like today. This is what we have and what it could become. And definitely, creating something that is very much needed in this community. So.
Okay.
Okay, so that's our presentation.
That's the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now take questions only of the consultant and staff, and then we'll go to public comment, and then we'll go to our comments. So let's start down. Ms. Barrios, do you have any questions?
I think my only question was, I saw the two fields that were adjacent to each other, the two playing fields. Is there, since it seems like this, thank you, since it seems like this park gets a lot of activity even right now, is there a way to separate the two? Is there going to be like some kind of separation so that they're not running into each other while they're playing, or is that just kind of, it's going to be wide open so that it can be integrated in different ways?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because that was our original design, that we did separate the two fields with some sort of low fence, and the community felt that that kind of restricts their use, and so because of that, they wanted to see it all being kind of connected. And I think right now we're still saying that there is a bigger field and a smaller field. It is still, in terms of surface itself, it is delineated, but vertically there is no separation between the two.
Got it.
Yeah.
And then one more question.
Sure. Yeah.
Knowing that the Boys and Girls Club is right there adjacent to it, is there going to be any kind of priority given to them for activities for the children, or maybe after-school activities, anything like that?
Thank you for the question. I think I can answer it to the commission and the committee members. We have a lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club, which talks about what they do with their building, and the city leases it to them for $1 a year. And then what are the terms under which the Boys and Girls Club uses the city park? When we worked on renewing the lease, in fact, council just approved a new 10-year lease with the organization. We left it with, we're going through this planning process. And as we move forward, as we see the needs and desires, we can revisit defining use of the park and what role the Boys and Girls Club would play. Clearly, after school is a time where it's could be in use more, and then when kids and families come in, then it has a different use. So we'll be working on that as we move forward.
Thank you.
Ms. Foxen.
I actually have two questions. One is about, the first is about lighting. And I wasn't sure where it is you're wanting to put in lighting. Is it all around the park or in specific places?
Right. Well, that was one of the comments from the community, wanting to have additional lighting along the back side of along the Mission, where the picnic areas are. Currently, there is existing lighting that's already here. It's a little hard to see, but there's one, and there's two, and there's three. There's three really tall kind of pole lights that's there right now, and those will remain. Yes.
So the plan is just to add some back on the creek side, yeah?
If I could just address that briefly, I think we know in design plan there needs to be more lighting. We understand that the way the lights are structured now, the trees have grown, it's not necessarily as effective as it could be. We haven't actually figured out where that lighting would go, but we have definitely heard from members of the community that lighting is an issue. So we have to study it a little bit more. It just doesn't come out as these are the exact locations that the lighting would go. The idea behind where we are in the concept plan is it's very conceptual. Getting your comments about lighting helps drive the next phase of design. If that helps answer your question.
It does, thank you. And the other question I had, and I've been to this park, I don't remember a true amphitheater. So when you use that term, I'm like, what is that? But that's okay, because my question is whether or not there are any plans to put in a small sort of a stage so that when there are performances, like the kids want to go out and do dance performances or some sort of a rally, anything like that, that there's actually a place for them to be where the audience can then be out on the lawn.
Well, This area here, maybe if we look at some of the existing photos, there is sort of an amphitheater already in place. And perhaps, it is staying. I think we have the option of enhancing it and make it a more usable, more of like a real amphitheater. So I think some of the, I think it makes sense to kind of enhance what's already there versus saying, let's take it out and start over. And I think that would be a great opportunity to make that a place to make it count as an amphitheater. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Leiden. Okay, Mr. Lester Buxton.
No question.
Ms. Clark.
Just a couple questions. So when you guys were introduced, they said you had significant background in urban park planning.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if you ever incorporate little street skating areas in your parks. I have some teenagers who are very into illegal street skateboarding, and a lot of them live in the west side.
Mm-hmm.
And they do go to this park, and they do skate illegally because they don't have a place to go. So I was wondering if you have seen parks or designed parks that incorporate small areas where they could ride street skating pieces and have it be endorsed by the community and safe.
That's a good question. I think skateboarding, it's interesting. A lot of times we try to design, like a lot of these low seat walls or ledges of a ramp. And kids tend to love these kind of adventurous edges where they can actually test out their skills. And I think within this park, potentially there might be opportunities for that to happen. Although I think, in terms of kids with moms with strollers, in terms of differentiating the use and making sure that it's safe for everyone. The skateboarders are having fun, but the families can also feel like they can use the park. So I think we would have to be really careful as far as we delineate where those areas would be for skateboarders. Yeah.
It might be worthy of some consideration because I can bet you money there will be kids that will be skating those things anyway.
Yeah, and they probably would be coming down San Pasqual because that's a really cool slot ramp. They could just plow down.
Super fun.
I could see that completely. Yeah.
So that's my the other question is, I think there's a need for lighting to make this park safer. But in your experience, have you put in lighting in parks and found that it acts like a light for moths that attracts more undesirable activity? Like if the lights are under the trees and people can't see where people would congregate near the lights, does it make people want to go there at night because they can see a little bit?
I think we have done several parks in urban areas like this, and the cities, our clients who are the cities, sometimes they would prefer that the park not to provide too much lighting at night, so because that would invite people to come to the park, and so their position is that from dawn to dusk, that's really the use of the park, and then some of the main paths might be lit, but softly, but just so that people feel like there is some light there, but it's not really meant for night use, and that's kind of their way of clarifying what this park hours of operation would be. So in this case, it's really up to the group to decide how we want to operate this park. Do we want nighttime events here, or maybe this is just mostly a daytime kind of place? Yeah.
If I could add to that answer as well, we have Old Mission Creek right next door to the park, and that is a sensitive habitat, so light spillover is obviously something we consider as well.
Okay. Mr. Perry.
No questions.
Ms. Heaton.
Thank you. I just wanted to, could staff remind me how old the playground is, the children's playground? I think we replaced it not that long ago, but
Yes, we actually just recently replaced it. And when we did replace it, we very carefully looked at the layout of the playground, anticipating that we would be doing a larger master plan in the near future. And as part of that, realizing, well, its shape and location, we made it bigger as well. We're in a position where we had enough funds to make it bigger, so that was a key priority. So there would be no changes to the playground under this scenario. The space and the location would remain the same.
And then the turf, I'm assuming you're talking about artificial grass, right? Turf, like, or are you? No, haven't.
We haven't quite. I think Justin might have.
So if I could, let me address that quickly, and then we've done some analysis that we can talk about. You know, part of what everybody talks about when they talk about Bonet is the fact that there's a big dirt spot for much of the year, and that's because it's loved, right? And there's a variety of reasons why that happens, and we have that in other park areas. And our management, when it comes to natural turf, is we have to close those areas off in order for the turf to regenerate, and then it lasts for a period of time. So Justin can speak more to some of the preliminary analysis, or Inyu as well. We did strategically look at artificial turf and the feasibility of that. This is a tough location to do that, from both a cost, a longevity, and a maintenance. And correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't get a lot of yes, go for artificial turf in this location. So the key then is, what can we do in the design and construction of the park to improve the soil conditions, to improve the irrigation, and to design the park in such a way so that seasonal closure doesn't prevent other recreation activities. So I think maybe Inyu or Justin can speak more to that. How do we make sure we have a flexible park space, knowing that there'll be sections like other parks, or take a park, Dwight Murphy, that are closed off while we work on the turf?
If I could add to that, what we heard at the workshop is that this is the West Side's backyard, and so it has multiple uses. It's not just a sports court or an area for soccer. It on the weekends has fairly large picnics that spill over into this area, and so the message was pretty clear that they want it to stay open space and very flexible.
And then finally, I was just curious, do we have a preliminary cost estimate for this? No. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mahoney?
No questions.
Okay. Mr. Kadri.
Thank you. I like the design. I live right by there, and I was just curious, were you planning on removing the entryway to the northwest part, where you're planning on putting the multi-purpose area?
You're talking about this area?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, so those steps would actually go away, and it would be replaced with this like multi-purpose area that supports the playground, and it could be used for so many different activities. And we also think that the access could also, there is still an access here that the residents could actually come in from the park on San Pascual.
Is the multi-purpose area still going to be elevated? Because right now it's kind of like a steep hill, or a pretty steep hill.
Oh, it's going to be. It's not so steep that we can't really. We would have to carve it out to flatten it. And so we haven't really gone to the next step of looking at that. We know there's some grading that needs to be done as far as moving dirt and stuff. So our next step is to really try to figure out how much do we need to take out. But it's kind of gentle, but then it goes up. So the flat side is actually where we can use. We might need a little more of that flat side, so we're not. Basically, I don't think we need to take out a lot of that soil. Yeah.
Okay.
If I could expand on that answer as well. So the stairs that you were talking about, they currently don't meet accessibility codes, and typically when you have an entry into a park, you need an accessible entrance as well. So if we were to put stairs back in that location, we would have to have a ramp that was considerable in length and take up a large portion of the park.
And will you still have the other entrances across the creek? And,
Yes,
and
it's there.
towards the bottom
Yes.
side of the boys' club?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great, because that's where I walk my dog.
Yeah,
all the
there's
time.
there's one that's coming from here, right? From
Right.
here, and then there's one that's somewhere here. So those are there. They'll stay. Yeah.
Mr. Aldana.
All right. I grew up 4 blocks from there, so I spent a lot of time when I was a kid, and this is a definite big improvement to what I remember. But my question is on the 6 foot on the walkway, because you talk about catching stormwater and filtration, but you're going to use DG. Did you consider permeable pavers?
Well, the walkway, we're thinking the walkway, right now it's concrete, but we haven't, it could change. We could, you're saying that whether this walkway should be permeable pavers.
Yeah, you're right by a creek.
Yeah. I mean, it could. It's just for the ease of, someone who's got strollers on wheels, and sometimes the pavers have little bumps. If we don't, concrete is really the smoothest surface for different kinds of uses, whether it's for kids or tricycle, or wheelers, but certain areas, it is possible, like in these picnic areas, we definitely want those to be permeable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, can you maybe consider it? Just
Yeah,
put it on the
sure.
table and see if it
Yes,
makes any sense?
absolutely. Yeah.
And then also on the walkways, is it possible some pedestrian lighting?
We potentially, we could consider that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also on San Pascual, is that possible, some pedestrian lighting? Because if you have 3 lights, my guess it's a street light on each corner and a mid-block street light. But pedestrian lighting is always welcome in those areas.
Yes.
So, is that a possibility?
So, commissioners and committee members, we're actually working closely with Public Works, because every time you look at a site, you go, we could do that, and we could do this, and wouldn't it be great if we made that improvement? So some of the things that we hope to have further discussions about is what other improvements could be done to San Pascual. We did hear at the site meeting that we had some concern about the speed of traffic on that road. We are looking at the sidewalk. We would like to look at lighting. Whether it's tied to this project or done separately
Later time.
remains to be discussed, but certainly, as we walk around the area, we always think of, what are all the things we could do if the world was our oyster? And definitely the pedestrian streetscape is important too.
Okay, thank you. And just one other thing, is there any room, because there's a lot of basketball activity, is there any room for a half court for smaller kids, 7 to 10, because the existing basketball court's a little too high for them if they wanted to
Right.
shoot.
This is actually a reconfigured basketball court. As you can see, it's actually bigger than what's there right now. So you can see this is actually one court. This is the other court. So it's actually more than what's there right now. So we're trying to make it even more to support more uses and more groups of people being able to play basketball. And some of these nets probably could be lower too if we try to look at equipments that allows you to adjust the height of the net so smaller kids could actually play a game there as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Sanford?
Thank you. I like this plan. It looks really good. And I really like that it's preserving the mural that I know is really important to the West Side community. I wanted to ask if you, in the community outreach phase, got to ask the public about how they access the park in terms of are they walking or biking or driving there? I don't know if you went into that level of detail, but if you did.
Jana, do you remember that?
We didn't ask that question. Getting to the park wasn't the focus of the meetings that we have. We sort of stand in the park and you look around at all the housing, and you pretty much know that a lot of people who live there obviously walk there. There are people that do drive there to use the field, and we're sensitive to that. But our focus is what this park does for the most immediate neighborhood, because that's really, really what it serves the most.
Okay, yeah, I know it's a really sort of dense area around there, and a lot of people live within walking distance of the park. I wanted to ask if you have any space in the design to put in like some bicycle parking racks, because I know that there's a lot of people who also are probably within biking distance of it.
Sure, we could consider that. In terms of if we were to include bike parking areas, we'll have to think about where to place it, because do we want to bring bikes into here? Probably it's not. We want this to be really for people who exercise, but not for bicyclists to run around, right? So maybe the bike parking could be further out towards where the entries are located, so they could park their bikes and then they can walk into the park.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Like, I totally understand that the path is a lot more geared towards walking and just like getting people to the playground and the other spaces. But I know that the Public Works Department is working on a really big
That's great.
bike boulevard project about 2 blocks away from here. So it'd be really nice if people could then, instead of hopping in their car, be able to bike there and have a secure bike parking spot, because that's been a kind of ongoing issue in Santa Barbara. And then, other than that, I think this looks really great. I don't have any further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great presentation. It's so nice to see the possibilities that can happen at Bonnet Park. We will now open public comment. You will have 2 minutes on the clock. There's a clock on the podium. So our first speaker will be Xavier Gutierrez. Hi there, and
hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Xavier Gutierrez, and I came here to talk about putting more cameras in the creek and more lighting, and then cutting back the brush, because there's a lot of activity back there, and it's not good.
Okay, so safety is your
Yes.
main concern. And do you use the park regularly?
Yes, I use it every day.
Good. Does this look like some improvements that you would want to see?
Yes.
Good. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Landon Rank. Hi there.
Hi, Commissioners, committee members, thank you. I really am excited about this plan, so thank you to SWA and everyone who's been working on this. I live and work on the west side, and I'm a part of a faith community that's there pretty regularly on Sundays for pickup soccer and that kind of thing, and just hang out. I know a lot of families who have soccer teams that play in the park on weeknights and that kind of thing. And so I do appreciate that they've kept tried to keep the vertical clear on the field space so that it can be used for multiple things. We do see a lot of bounce houses and a lot of volleyball nets, and it's always flexing kind of how much of the field is being used for a soccer game and how much is for a party. And so that varies a lot week to week, but it's very used. So we appreciate the flexibility there. And then I think for that reason, I'd continue to advocate for keeping that space open. I think something like the amphitheater, which you brought up, the seating, I've mostly seen it used for just parents watching their kids play soccer. On the weekends, from what I've seen, it's not overly used. I don't know that adding the stage space would do anything to increase the amount of use of the amphitheater, but for that reason, I just continue to advocate for the field being the kind of one of the primary focuses of the park in general. But again, thank you. We're really excited about it. So.
Okay, as a field user, I've done this for something like 23 years, and I worked at the Boys and Girls Club for 4 years, so Bonnet, and worked at Harding for a long time. Every time that we've come to the field, really what we hear from the public is, we'd rather have dirt than shut. you know, how do you feel about that if it has to come up on that?
So dirt, then what?
Then shut for a while to regenerate.
Oh, I see.
You know, the reseeding, all of the things that happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think personally I would advocate for that too. What we see end up happening is people are crossing through the caution tape when they put it up to do the field planting. So it feels like it's almost a lost cause when we have to do the planting and have it shut for a while.
Yeah, I hate to use the word lost cause. What I kind of think of it is using it to the best of its uses at all times, because it is all we have on the west side.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Agree. I agree. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's important, you know, and I hope you don't mind asking questions like this, but I think this is our time to really hear from people and as a council and a commission as to what they want. And last I have Richard Sander. Oh, more are coming. Good.
Hello.
Hi there.
Thank you, commission members and council members. I just wanted to say thank you so much for even taking the time to really consider Bonnet Park. I'm part of that faith community that meets over every Sunday at this west side. This really is the neighborhood backyard, as you've heard. And I think one of the main things that I would really urge is just practicality in a lot of this. Even as we're talking about the walkway, I love that there's so many picnic benches, but people come to bring baby showers and parties and what have you, how they get from all that equipment, whether it be barbecues or bounce houses or food or ice chests, from the street to that area, I think would be really important. So I actually like the concrete idea, believe it or not. And the second thing that I would really advocate for is, as you are making these corrections to the park, this is a lot of the community's only space for backyard parties. So even closing down part or some of it for a given amount of time really affects a lot of people. So I would hope that it's done in stages, that nothing's done all at once, or that it's not like that all the picnic benches are being replaced at one time, because that would really be difficult for the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Michael Baker. Hello.
Hello.
Yes.
Good evening.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Yeah, thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm Michael Baker, CEO, United Boys and Girls Clubs. We're really excited about this project. This is going to be a tremendous addition to what we're doing currently in the Boys and Girls Club there. Very excited, and I want to thank staff for certainly including us from the beginning stages. Appreciate that very much. It's gone really well. We're excited about where it is right now. I personally, on behalf of the organization, we would love to see it be turf, just because I hate to see the park closed ever. It's just a huge challenge when the park is closed at all for any period of time. So if it's possible, we certainly would love to see it be a turf field.
An artificial turf?
Artificial turf, yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Yeah,
we're good. We're happy.
One of the things I read in the report was that the artificial turf, with the amount of parties that go on and food that happens, becomes an issue of cleaning the turf. Is that what I read, Steph? And so that made sense to me. I hadn't ever thought of that. It's like having it on your rug.
Sure. Understood.
Okay.
Understood.
Thank you. Yep. Tara Taylor.
Hi, I actually came here before the Splash Park one, but this, I'm relatively new to the community, and my daughter, we were very blessed to be, to find the Boys and Girls Club and enroll her in there in short-term notice last summer, and it's a wonderful program, and I can tell you from experience that park is a very well-loved park, and the idea of it, this project impacting that community and improving the park, I think, is fabulous. I did want to say that I've lived in many other communities that have fitness equipment, and what my experience has been with fitness equipment in public parks like that is that the fitness equipment does tend to break down pretty quickly and then just become a piece of equipment that costs the community a lot of money and doesn't get much use. Just my feedback on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And our last speaker is Brianna Lane.
Hello. Good evening, everybody. So I live literally right around the corner from this park. We were just there this evening picking up the food that they offer for the food trucks. And we use the park every single day. I do have to say that having having both fields potentially closed due to the mud and having to reseed and everything is really a big deal, because then the kids can't run around, and if they do, they come home covered in mud. So I would say that if you're not into doing the entire place in artificial turf, maybe choose one of the fields so that you don't have to have the entire field area closed down. Artificial turf is great. It saves water, and it's easy to clean. All you have to do is hose it off, and then it's clean. The other thing I would say is security is a big deal. So on the bottom portion where you can cross the creek and then it goes up the stairs, there's a lot of activity that isn't the safest for children. And can be a lot of trash that is also not safe for children, if you catch my drift. That drug use and things like that. So I would just say that, especially along the Mission Creek, lighting and possible cameras or something. I don't know what the solution is, but something along those lines to help protect that, because kids do use that to go from one side of the park to the other. The last point I would like to make is the playground structures were geared for larger children, bigger kids, rather than small kids, and there is a very large population of very small children. So just be mindful of that my kids, I always have to watch them on the structures. It's for larger children. So that's my comment.
Thank you very much. And that concludes public comment, and I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who came out. I think it shows how important Bonet Park is that you've taken the time to come. So thank you very much. And now we're going to go to comments from the commission and the council. And I think I'll start with Mr. Perry, and then we'll circle around. How's that sound? I told Ms. Fox and I wouldn't put her, or now Ms. Barrios on the spot first.
I'm just going to say, you're long overdue. My years with Westside Boys and Girls Club, I always referred to the club as the living room for that neighborhood. So I agree wholeheartedly that the park is the backyard, and you folks really need that there. So commendable to staff.
Ms. Heaton.
I just want to thank staff and SWA and also the community for coming out. I really appreciate hearing from all of you. That park is as Roger said, long overdue for some love. And I'm encouraged by this plan, and I hope you continue to stay engaged. Make sure that these things that you've suggested do get implemented. And thank you.
And I just want to second what Ms. Heaton said. So thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Aldana.
Yes, that was great to hear from the public. It looks like there still needs to be a little fine-tuning, and I hope you take all what they said into consideration. Thank you.
Ms. Sanford.
I also want to thank all the public for coming out and speaking on this, and especially the youth in the neighborhood. And I want to second that point that one of the public members brought up about possibly staging the construction, if that's possible, because this is the only park around for so many people and the only really big open space that's available. So if it would be possible to maybe like update the basketball court and the field separately, or something like that. But I really liked that idea. Thank you.
Ms. Barrios.
I'd just like to thank the public for coming out and giving their comments and their
Into the mic. Could you use the mic so we get you on? Thank you.
I just want to thank the public for coming out and giving their comments and suggestions. And I ask that you take to heart what they did, their input, because basically they are the ones that are going to be there on a daily basis.
Thank you, everybody, for being here and supporting not just the park, but the entire community, the city, and all of us. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming. I really appreciated the comment, I think, by Brianna about possibly splitting the difference between having turf and grass. I don't know if that's an option, but I like the creative thinking about it, trying to take into consideration everyone's needs. And I was really pleased to hear that the playground is staying. I know it's new, and when I first saw that this was being redone, I thought, oh gosh, I hope we didn't waste resources on doing something new that's going to be torn out. My daughter loves that playground. She calls it Rainbow Park, and it's one of her favorites. So I'm glad to see that it's staying and that the whole park will have some more opportunities.
Mr. Lester Buxton.
I just want to thank everyone for coming and especially echoing the concern about the field. Although I don't play sports, I remember attending a barbecue and the way the picnic tables are set up. If you're in a large party, you have to be huddled in very tightly in order to avoid going on the field. So I think that whatever happens, the field should be open the optimal time of the year. Thank you.
Ms. Clark.
I too just want to express my gratitude to everyone who was part of the process. 800 plus flyers went out and 14 people went to the workshop, which is, it's great that 14 people went, but more than 14 people need to go. So Xavier, it's up to you to tell your friends that you can make a difference.
Okay, I have a few comments. I'm really happy to see the accessibility issues addressed at the Boys Club entrance. I think that's going to be really important. And what I see as that concrete pathway goes around is that it is accessibility. It gets people to the picnic. We don't often think about that, and usually Mr. Lester Buxton keeps us on track with those things. But that's a really important component for everyone, families, people with any kind of mobility issues. I do like the idea, if possible, to add a preschool aspect to the playground if we could. The families in the area have children of all ages, and I think it's an important place for parents to be able to get together. I would wonder if there was some mention of the number of picnic tables and then the movement of things to that area. And I'm wondering if we just want to keep an eye over the next few months on the usage of the park. Are we seeing people, what are we seeing people bring in? Maybe we could ask the rangers to just start snapping some pictures on Saturdays and Sundays to see, what's happening.
You name it, it comes.
So we want to, I think it might help us as to the placement of the tables, whether we want fixed tables or whether we know that people are going to bring in those white foldable tables of their own to make something bigger or longer or whatever, just so we maintain our flexibility. I like the idea of the one entrance to the park being taken away, partly from a safety standpoint for children. If the less places we have them coming out of the park and darting through traffic or whatever kids decide to do is better. And I think, again, the hard court surface, the flexibility in that is really important too. And I think it allows for different uses. We see different uses all the time. We've seen everything from dance troupes coming in to do a community event to whatever. So it's nice that that be maintained. As far as the access through to San Andres Street, that's always been a tough one. I think we just always work on that. In a sense, though, I'm thankful we have it because it's more open space that we have in the community. I was looking through some old photos the other day and had actually some cleanup photos from 1990 when we did one of the first creek cleanups over there that I'll have to give to staff. So it's It is a really important asset to our community. I think one of the things I think we'll find is that, I'm sorry to say, we're not going to make everybody happy with the turf. Whatever we come to the best conclusion with, I think we'll do our best to balance everybody's needs. But we'll do our best, and we'll continue to hear from the public about it. And whatever goes in doesn't mean that's the end of the world. I mean, things change over time. So thank you to everyone. I think this has been a really nice process in that oftentimes it makes people uncomfortable that they're presented with a plan because they think, oh, well, it's a done deal already. But I hope that the community sees that what they said was incorporated into revisions and that can continue to go forward, that it's you're not being told, we're asking for input, and that staff and our consultants have heard. So I think as long as we keep moving forward together, we'll get a nice park. I hope we can get this funded. That's the next piece. So thank you. Ms. Zachary, would you like to conclude?
Yeah, Chair Longstreet, Commissioners, committee members, if I could just walk sort of through next steps, because some of this is new for folks in the audience, and then also thank everybody for coming out. We appreciated the people that could take the time that evening that we went. The reason why we went back on a weekend is we realized we really needed to get more input, and a lot of the input we received that evening was really just verified. There's always slight tweaks. Everybody has a slightly different opinion, and that's sometimes the challenge with designing a project. But we definitely heard loud and clear, and I think it was mentioned tonight, a bunch of fitness equipment, not such a great idea. A couple of pieces that are sturdy, that don't break, okay, let's talk about that. We definitely heard about the turf and the fields. We had an idea of what we thought people might want, and I said, not quite so much. We want more picnic space. People do bring in tables and chairs and whatever else they can find. Monitoring that, I think, is also a really good idea because it just helps us better understand it for the design process, not that we would change it necessarily. Moving forward, and just a couple of other things, the playground structure is a real challenge, and when we deal with different age groups and we do the older kids, we always try to add in swings for younger kids, and so sometimes that works for parents and sometimes it's not so good. What we find in our older playgrounds is younger kids want to go there anyway, so there's that fine balance between making it interesting enough but also not where children can interact with each other in a safe manner. So we'll definitely take that into consideration, and certainly as we will need to replace it again, probably in about 10 years, so it's a high priority for us. So moving forward, the comments, the questions, the input that we got right tonight, we'll be sitting down with SWA and sifting through how to integrate as much of it as we can. Refining the concept plan. This is a project that requires review by the Architectural Board of Review. This is not something we can just go build tomorrow. And we will ultimately be bringing it back to the commission as we get closer. There's a lot more detail. The devil's sometimes in the details when you start figuring these things out. So through the next 6 months, we expect to be answering those questions, doing that additional work. We have all of the funding in place to basically get us to breaking ground. We don't have any construction money right now, but the work that we're doing right now over the next 6 months will position us, hopefully, to either apply for grants or request city general fund allocations to build the project, with the idea that if funding was available, we could begin as early as spring, summer 2019. The comments about phasing construction, we certainly can take those, figure out how to do that. Sometimes that's good, sometimes not so good. But we also, when we think about projects and construction, we think about when's it's least likely to impact. Now here, that may be never. But then we also think about weather and so on and so forth. But for sure, we'll keep everybody informed and want people to stay informed. And there will be other opportunities to see where we're going with this project. It's not just going to happen tomorrow. And we appreciate the time that
that everybody spent. So thank you.
Thank you. One thing I would add about the playground issue is there's a lot of playground regulations and standards now. So sometimes we think, well, we could just put some more kids stuff in there, but there's fall zones and there's space. And so it isn't that someone isn't listening. Oftentimes it doesn't fit sometimes. So just bear with us in some of those things. So thank you very much. And now I hope many of you will stay because the Splash Playground is going to be another accessible area for the West Side. So thank you. Mr. Van Mullen, is it you again?
Madam Chair, are you ready?
We are ready.
Okay. I'm here to give you a presentation on the West Beach Splash Playground. This is an aerial of the site. You can see in the dashed yellow line, that is the location of the existing wading pool. If you look to the bottom right-hand corner, there are boats there. That is the harbor. And then just above that is the boat ramp. So in that parking lot closest to the wading pool, you'll see that there are boats parked on trailers. And then to the south of that parking lot is a paid lot for vehicles, part of the waterfront. There's also free parking as part of Pershing Park, and right next to the wading pool is the Los Baños Del Mar pool. The existing pool was rebuilt in 1977. It survived for 37 years, and until 2014, the wading pool was closed for several different reasons. Major one was the leak of an unknown location that was going to require destructive testing to be located. And then the drought came along, and it was a response to the drought to close the pool. If the pool was reopened today, we'd be required to upgrade the filtration system and to add accessible ramp into the pool. Project goals and objectives include expanding the facility's use to year-round. The wading pool was only open approximately 3 months a year. A splash playground will also provide play for warmer months. As you know, Santa Barbara can have a heat spell in the middle of Thanksgiving break, and it can have cold weather in the summertime. So creating a traditional playground during those cold weather spells is also one of the goals and objectives. Now, the theme was carefully thought out to respect the area and the surroundings, the ocean and the waterfront. And then our overall main goal is to maximize the community resource of this piece of property in this prime location. Process to date is in April, we again hired SWA and worked with them to create a concept plan. They have experience with splash playgrounds. That concept plan was then shown at a community workshop in May. This workshop, we noticed 1,400 direct mailers, over 100 emails, and we received 13 participants. We also went out to Ortega Pool and interviewed pool users to get kind of a cross-section. What we found is in the interviews is that the feedback given also supported the feedback that we found at the workshop. So today we're here to present a revised plan incorporating the revisions and comments that were heard at the workshop. And then our next step after this hearing would be to prepare plan revisions for design review. We'll have to go to historic landmarks. We're right next to a historic building and within a historic district, and then go through an environmental process. We're right in the coastal zone. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Ing Yu once again.
And welcome back.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk about the splash pad. So this is just our cover page. Let's go to the next one. Yeah.
I just love this photo so much. Wanted to spend a little bit of time on it.
Okay, so I think this is a really special project for us in the sense that I think, the site is just so interesting. It's right by the water. And then so you get this amazing view of the ocean and all the Channel Islands out there, So that immediately kind of led us to think about, well, how can we bring this nature component into the park, into the splash pad? And in terms of nature, it's not just about what we see, but what's underneath the ocean, the natural resources that help to support, people. Santa Barbara from the day it existed, the Chumash Indians, as well as the earlier fishing industry even today. So the resources and the abundance of this, marine ecology will immediately kind of hit us really hard as far as where that idea, how we go about designing this splash pad. And okay, so the second inspiration really stemmed from the site itself, where it is kind of part of this historic context where the first part, Pershing, Park, has always been there, and then also Los Baños, the Rio community pool house was there for a long time. And how does this splash pad fit within this historical context was something that really kind of challenged our curiosity. And then the third piece had to do with this waterfront itself, that it is still a working waterfront. So it's not just tourists coming and visiting, but it really has a function where people actually still, make their livelihood here. So the authenticity of this waterfront was important to us. So with those three elements, we created this design. So the next page. So just a little bit of clarification on what a splash pad is. Definitely it's not a pool because it's very, very shallow. It's not a wading pool because the water doesn't really just sit there. It's basically a hardscape that actually drains so that kids can't really drown or, a lot of time when the water's turned off, it's actually dry. So that surface could be used for other, different events and purpose. And because of that, we don't need a lifeguard to be there. And then the splash pad itself allows us to actually choreograph different kinds of play opportunities, such as water jets splashing, popping out of nowhere, get kids really excited. Or there could be water cannons installed to shoot water so kids can interact with that, and which we'll talk about later. And so when there's no water, this place is actually a large playground that can be used year-round. So we think the splash pad is actually a really good solution for all kinds of uses throughout the year. So next, and everyone knows about the site. I don't need to keep, belabor what's going on there. One thing that's kind of important to note is that there is a bird habitat in those tree groves, right? So there's these ficus trees. There's a grove of ficus trees along Cabrillo Boulevard, and there's just such an amazing kind of surprise when you go there and you see these large birds hopping around and the nests, So immediately, again, that's something that we really need to be careful as far as designing this park is concerned. And then the view of the water, it's absolutely amazing. And there's also a bike lane that really edges the site. And then so there's an active bicycle route where people really use it for recreational purposes, and then there's a parking lot beyond. Okay. Next slide. And so splash pad, I think it's approximately 45 to 5,000 square feet in size. The wading pool existing, it's really big. So again, question is, what do we do with it? If we convert it into splash pad, do we need such a big area? maybe it's too big, right? So that's another challenge that we encountered. Next page. So utilities and bike lanes, some of these things we need to consider as we design. Next page. And then the opportunities is that we do have a big site. It's 20,500 square feet of open space. So a big splash pad is not going to take up all that space. So what do we do with the rest of the area? And then also there is the pool house next door. How do we interface with that? And perhaps we need additional restroom on our site to accommodate the future users of this splash pad. Next page. So Gianna and I and everybody, we got out there one afternoon and we reached out to the community, and a lot of concern. A lot of people are mostly really excited to see what's going to happen to it. But one of the things that people brought up was, again, the bird habitat and how we should be really, take that into consideration as part of the design. And so one of the conclusions that came as a result of that discussion is perhaps we would kind of adjust our play. As you can see, there was an initial really rough concept being presented, but because of that community meeting, we decided that we need to pull back the splash pad away from the bird bird habitat area, so that there is that they got their space as well as for the splash pad for the community. So next page. And then there was also a desire to be able to watch the kids while they're playing in the splash pad, so parents could actually watch their kids in the shade, because in the summertime it gets really hot. And so having covered shaded seating areas that's easily accessible, and so that was very important. And then having different ways of getting together with a family throughout the park was something we need to consider. Okay, next page. And then looking at the bird, as mentioned earlier, looking at the bird nestling activity as an opportunity to talk about nature as an educational tool, to talk about bird habitats and the species and their habitat needs. And so that's going to be incorporated as part of the design. And the Chumash Indians as well. Okay, next. So here's the revised concept plan. And so if we to walk along relative to the points that's being brought up in the plan. So location number 1 is where the park entry would exist. So it's it's located along the Paseo, so that it really connects people as people are coming to the beach and going to the harbor. They could actually access from the side into the park. And we try to keep it there because, again, Cabrillo is a busy street, and it's important that we kind of not put the entrance out on the street, and for safety reasons, and also to bring it further away from where the herons and the egrets are located. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the restrooms. It's currently located at the southwest or western edge, and it's access as you get into the park. It could access the restroom, so it's not supposed to be accessed from the backside, so that it's really serving the users of this park. And it's could be 2 restrooms, either unisex or men and women, and there's a place where you can change, and there's also outdoor showers being associated with that facility. So number 3 is the sandy beach paving design. So the concept is splash pad, that it's a wet area in the middle that simulates the ocean, the waters, and then the beaches being surrounding that site. Number 4 is the harbor patrol boat, And that's really the exciting piece that we want to highlight, because we think having some kind of iconic element that is very much about Santa Barbara, the patrol boat, and there's different gadgets. Kids could climb over it, they can go up there and start maneuvering the water cannon, and so that it's much more interactive for kids. And then meanwhile, their siblings could be down there on the splash pad trying to avoid getting shot by the water. And then there's also water cannons on the ground where they can start playing with water in a very interactive way. Lifeguard overlook slides, that's to the north. There's 2 of them. Again, trying to think about these, waterfront, beachfront elements, and then reinterpreting them as part of this interactive play structure. And so that you can actually slide down from these lifeguard stations. And then the water jets and cannons, mentioned before, you could actually interact with those. And then number 7 is a buoy climber. Again, thinking that if this splash pad gets turned off during the winter time, that there's different things you can do on the surface itself. So these become a climber where kids can interact with. And then the splash pad also will have these mounts to simulate the waves, as if it goes up and down. So again, when it's dry, the kids can actually interact with that. So next slide. And then number 8 is the picnic areas with beach umbrellas. And you can see these are red circles that look like candy canes. And these are large beach umbrellas surrounding the splash pad. And so parents could actually watch their children as they're having, conversations amongst themselves. Number 9, we understand the community wanted to have a larger area that's for special events, parties or birthday celebrations, and those could be reserved ahead of time, for that use. So that was actually came out of the community meeting. Chumash Culture Interpretive Area, that's number 10. So there's different components within the park that address different aspects of Santa Barbara. Casual seating area, these are movable tables and chairs that could be located within the splash pad. Kelp climbers, so thinking about the marine life, what's underneath the surface of water, and being inspired by the kelp forest, wouldn't be really cool if you could actually climb this kelp forest. And so the design of this climber actually will make you feel like you're in this kind of, forested marine environment. Bird habitat interpretive area along the edge. So that's kind of where the sand dune edge would be. So it would be sculpted mounds and grasses, and then also have some sort of interpretive panels that address, talk about the birds' habitats up there. And then the beach cliff slide, that's kind of another dry element that's integrated within that sand dune area. Okay, next slide. So the seasonal elements during the summertime, what you can see is between the blue and the yellow. So during the summertime, the blue is where the wet area is. So if kids don't really want to play with water during that time, when that happens to be that they're not interested that day, there's plenty of other experiences that they can have within the splash pad park. Next. So this one is about wintertime. So if we don't turn on the splash pad, essentially this entire park could be a large playground for kids. So we're really conscious about this project being kind of an all year round kind of equity of experiences for all seasons. Yeah. And then I guess I just want to say one more thing is that this park is going to be fenced because we want to be careful that kids don't run out to the street or go out to the bike lanes and to the parking lot. So it will be fenced, but we want to be careful with the design of the fencing so that it has a nice kind of articulation as far as maybe it folds and moves in and out between planting areas. So you don't actually see the fence, although it does provide a safety mechanism for the park users. Oh, sorry. So these are just quick inspiration ideas. In terms of water play, these are different options, such as the jets, the water cannons, and then even the surface itself can start having an interpretive element of, let's say, the topography of Channel Islands, the slopes and the mountains, and that could become a play element for kids. In the next series. And this is the Harbor Patrol boat. And so that's why it looks like real life. But if we were to reinterpret it into a play structure, it could be something that's very colorful, interactive, and kids could totally run up and down, climb over it. Yeah. Next one, the buoy climber could become a climbing structure if we redesign it and reinterpret it. Next slide. The beach cliffs, so inspired by the sand dunes and the beach, landscape. The slides can again interact as part of that language. And kelp forest becomes a yellow climber, maybe large scale, leaves, metal pieces that look like leaves. Kids can kind of play, hide and seek in there. Next slide. Harbor Seal Gateway. We might use some of these wrought iron designs to create these seals and marine animals as part of that gateway design. Next slide. So that's really the concept for the splash pad. And so thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. That's very exciting to look at. We're going to start now with questions from the Commission and Council. So let's start with Ms. Sanford, and we'll work our way this way. Any questions? And you don't have to have any questions.
Yeah, I don't actually have any questions at this point.
Okay, Mr. Aldana.
As far as the water slide, so on the water slide, there's no lifeguard either?
The water slide, it's actually, it's just a slide where you actually slide into the water. It doesn't have water on the slide itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then no lifeguard?
No lifeguard.
And
right.
on the bird and habitat?
Yeah.
Is this an endangered species, or is this just birds that just?
It's just.
Are they a nuisance and just?
It's not endangered.
Droppings or?
Wait. Staff, did you have it?
Just to answer that question, they are protected. They're not endangered. But they're definitely protected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mahoney?
No comment.
Okay.
No questions either.
Mr. Perry?
Are the birds indigenous to?
Get in the mic.
Are the birds indigenous to our area?
The birds are they come back every year. So if you call that indigenous, they'll be back in the same nest each year.
Ms. Clark?
I know it's questions. My comment is I love the design. I think it's amazing. But I worry, what are the drought considerations you've taken into consideration in terms of water usage and cost to our community and the department?
Well, the splash pad, the water would be recirculated. So it's filtered and recirculated. So it's actually pretty economical and water conserving. It's not going to. We might need to recharge it to kind of for the reservoir. But other than that, it's actually pretty conservative in terms of water use. Yeah.
Have you analyzed splash pads in other cities to see what the evaporative loss is and how much it actually does need recharged?
We're still working with a splash pad consultant to look at the amount of water that's needed to, it would be pumped out of the reservoir, recirculated and replenished. But my sense is it's not a lot of evaporation.
I think we have Mr. Hanna up here to answer a question for us.
Chair Longstreet, commissioners and council members, Rich Hanna, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. My experience with splash pads is that, as Ms. Ingyu was explaining, is that the recirculation of the water is very effective. In terms of what we lose in evaporation, we lose that in a wading pool on a regular day basis or splash out. So in some cases, the wading pool itself loses more water than the splash pad.
And I guess I like the fact that you're designing it so it can also be used as a playground in times of extreme drought. You could turn it off.
Yes, that's
and
right.
Use it for other. I think that's really important. Thank you for that. Okay. And hopefully we can hear more about the numbers of water usage later.
Sure, we can certainly look into that and get that information for you.
Commissioner Lesner-Buxton.
Thank you. Two questions. My first is, have you consulted with the Chumash community about the interpretive station relating to their people?
Chair Longstreet, commissioners and committee members, great question. We tried to address it a little bit in the staff report. Because this is conceptual, this is kind of the first opportunity to present it, but we hope to, with your thoughts on the approach, actually reach out to Chumash community members and say, we'd like to do something. Here's a concept. What do you think? Is it something that you would find valuable and would be interested in us pursuing? But that's in our plan.
Okay, please do, because I'm always worried about cultural appropriation. And my second question is, could you explain more about the water cannons and where the water shoots out of? I'm just worried that if I'm in a mobility device or I'm blind, I could trip on a sprinkler and hurt myself if the water just shoots out at random on the pavement.
So about the water cannons and... Sorry, it's a question about the water cannons and how does that affect people?
Yes, I would to know if where are they and how big are they, and if people with wheelchairs have a tendency to crash into them, or people who are blind cannot see them.
So the question from Jacob, and that's a great point, is the actual water features and the spraying of water. Basically, I think the question is, how do we make sure someone who might be in a wheelchair or have sighted issues, be blind, not be harmed or in some way not know that it's there? So what accessibility components will we build into the project so that it can serve a broad range of community members? So.
Right. I guess, Jacob, one thing I neglected to mention is that aside from these other more interactive, water experiences, there's also some areas where smaller kids could go and play with water, and people with disabilities, where there might be these pools that, have water in it, that kids could actually play with it and move the water around. And so there's different levels of water play that we're trying to we're designing for different needs and different age groups.
And if I can expand on that answer. So the water cannons sounds a little dangerous, but it is it's marketing, and it's still safe for kids.
Right.
And they don't have full range. The range would be limited to only the wet area. There also would be at a height that would be cane detectable, so if you were vision impaired, that you wouldn't trip over them. They'd probably be fairly bright colors, so that gives you a kind of an idea of the spray elements of the water cannons.
So just to be clear, the water elements aren't directly on the concrete, so I wouldn't be like walking along and suddenly be hit by a water thing.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good question.
Yeah, if you stayed on the concrete, you wouldn't get hit.
Okay, thank you.
Slide.
I have 3 questions. One of the reasons it was mentioned that the original wading pool was closed was because of a leak situation. So I was just wondering, I don't really understand how this works. I know you're just talking about conceptual right now, but clearly there's a reservoir underneath that's going to be used to recycle the water. Is that using the wading pool as it is, or that whole thing's going to be gone?
I think
the
the wading pool would have to be taken out. And we still have to look at, we're at a concept level, but as far as what happens to the wading pool, because it's got this gunite, edges, and sometimes it's actually more expensive to keep it than to take it out. So we have to look at this kind of demolition cost related to that. So it would be a new mechanical system that supports the wading, the splash pad.
So there wouldn't be that concern then of that continue. Okay,
right.
thank you.
That's right.
You showed that it's fenced and there would be some sort of gate. Is that gate something that locks at night, or it's just something that can close? Like the park near my house, it doesn't lock. Any adult can open it. It's designed to keep kids in, but it's not locked with a padlock or something like that.
Well,
would this be something that's closed at night so people can't get in, or it's more just to keep children from running out?
I'll defer that to
Chair and Council and Commissioners, I think the proposal here would be that we could lock the park at night. So, the design here is you're bringing kind of a Kids World element to a splash playground, but unlike Kids World, we'd be able to lock it and secure it at night. We would also have equipment in there that we'd want to make sure it doesn't leave. One of the advantages here is families can come and don't have to bring a bunch of umbrellas and chairs, and we'd want to make sure that equipment was secure through the nighttime periods as well.
Okay, and so then the bathrooms would also be locked, I assume, at night?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Foxen.
That was actually one of my questions about the fence. How high are we looking at building the fence?
Typically in the parks that we've designed, it's about 6 feet.
Okay.
And typically we don't see that it needs to be any higher. If it's lower, then you can easily hop over. But again, the fence, it will be screened with shrubs and plantings. So it's, and the fence itself, it's going to be a nicely designed fence. So overall, it's going to feel like it's part of the park, and it belongs to that whole language, the concept itself. Yeah.
Great, because my concern too was that at night I can see the teenagers trying to get over and do whatever they're doing in the splash pad, which would not be good. Right. My other question, first I have to say though that the birds are wonderful. They're chattering all the time. So I'm glad the birds get to stay. Yay. Also, the material for the umbrellas. What type of umbrellas are those going to be? Any idea yet?
We're still working on the design. We're thinking these are large umbrellas, custom design. Maybe it's made of polycarbonate. It's probably not canvas, because canvas requires a lot of maintenance and cleaning, and it's not easily washable if they're staying. So we might think it's some sort of polycarbonate or I don't want to say plastic, but we're concerned about the UV as well. So it's still being kind of researched as far as what's the best material for it.
And something that could last for years and don't have to be replaced
Right.
every 2 or 3 years
Yes.
then. Okay, great. I would also like to put into consideration as a cover an arbor
Yeah.
with flowers, natural plants, whatever can be there. I remember, born and raised here, going to that wading pool when they had a mushroom in it, which nobody remembers. Sebastian? Okay, good. And there was an arbor out there. And it was always shaded because of the plants growing over it. And it was wonderful. So I would like to put that out as a consideration for some type of shading area as well.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Barrios.
Thank you. We use that area a lot. I live very close to there. And just about the birds, which we love there, but I got all excited and interjected before because there's a lot of bird droppings right in that like kind of half a block area between Los Baños and then after you leave where all the birds are. So maybe if we're going to have so many people coming into that area, there could be possibly just a sign put up because people don't know that there are birds, a bird habitat in there, and to the extent of what it is, because even walking on the sidewalk, you can see the bird droppings basically cover the entire sidewalk. So I think maybe having some kind of, educational fun sign saying, hey, look, here are these type of birds here. At least people will be aware that they are there before they get torpedoed with an unpleasant surprise when they go there.
It's both it's like, look at the great birds, but be careful.
Yeah, something, a little bit funny, to let them be aware. And the second thing is there is a really big need for a restroom there. So I'm glad to hear that there's going to be a public restroom. My only concern is that Pershing Park has a large homeless population. And so I'm concerned that they use the restrooms at Pershing Park, but I'm concerned that this will be just another opportunity for them to use the restrooms there, especially if there's going to be a lot of children in the area. I would be a little concerned about the safety with that. But otherwise, I think it's a wonderful idea. I think it's very much needed in that area. We don't really have anything for little kids, and I love that idea. And one more thing, the slides, at the bottom of the slide, is that going to be, because if it's a splash pad, there's not typically a lot of pools of water, from what I'm familiar with splash pads. What's going to be at the bottom?
Sorry. I think we need to think about what that paving surface is. Right now we're thinking that it could be rubberized surface, just like your regular sliding, area where kids come down and they hit this nice soft cushiony surface. Although we do want to, knowing that it's going to be wet, so we have to look at the material, make sure it could counter wetness and all that stuff that's going on there.
Okay. Thank you.
I would just add to the water slide concept here, because I think it brings up connotations of your typical water slide where you drop into a tank of water, or now what you see is those run-out flumes at the bottom of your traditional water slides at other aquatic facilities. I think the purpose here is to have a slide that has some water, but there's no water reservoir or anything that would require a lifeguard or any sort of standing water. So it would be something that's a safe element, doesn't require any sort of certified staff to manage that.
Okay.
Chair Longstreet, if I could just add a few answers to some of the questions and comments. So first of all, the birds are protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, and they are night-crowned herons. They do make a mess. It's at a certain time of year when they're nesting and fledging. We spend some of our department resources managing the sidewalk, even though sometimes it doesn't look like we do, in terms of washing it. So the birds are there to stay, and the question will be, how can we design a splash play area where we can coexist with the birds? And you'll notice, if you'll remember, if we look back at one of the design schemes, it shows that the entrance is actually not right underneath the trees, and the area would be set back from those trees. So there's a fine balance between allowing the birds to exist there and also making sure we can provide a recreation amenity. The concern about adults using the restroom that perhaps we may not want to have use the restroom. I mean, we would have rules in terms of how you would come and go, and
I can ask Rich Hanna to speak to it more, but we don't generally have people wandering into the wading pool area at Oak Park. There isn't a restroom in there, mind you, but really managing how that restroom is used, it would be something that we would consider.
I would just add to that. I think there's a couple of benefits here. One is locating the restroom inside the actual fenced area provides some delineation so that it doesn't feel like it's just your typical public restroom. I would also say that having frequent activity at any location can be a deterrent for the types of misuse activities that I think people think about with a public restroom, similar to purging. And so I would equate this similar to the restroom that the harbor has, which is immediately across the parking lot. It's open to anybody that uses it. And a lot of the activity that you see at Pershing Park doesn't occur in that harbor open public restroom during the daytime. And so I think with the combination of activity, the fact that it's in a fenced area and it's really serving families in the community, I don't think a lot of those activities would occur there.
Okay. We will now open public comment. And our first speaker will be Tara Taylor.
I just want to say that I mentioned before that I'm new to the community. I've been here just a couple weeks shy of a year now, and it is wildly exciting to me to see that a community is willing to gift something like this to the public, or obviously the public is purchasing it, but it's just very wonderful. And I did see the birds, and that was my first exposure to the birds, and I think it is a double-edged situation. I think as a mom of a 6-year-old, I think sitting on the opposite side and watching the birds pop up out of there like a whack-a-mole game is very fun. But walking below and smelling the bird poop issue is, that's a tourism area. There's actually a tour that goes past Los Banos, a walking tour of the community that goes there and stops in the area. So, I can see that's something that needs to be addressed by the community too. But I think that Ms. Barrios mentioned the watch out signage, which I think, and the bird identification, which I think would be wonderful as a member of the community, something funny and playful, like, hey, look up, they're birds, they poop. And power washing was mentioned too, and I know that we're trying to maintain that, but that would be great. And I recently visited Carpinteria because I volunteer on a project that's there, and I noticed in the art, the contemporary art section, that they had this place that had sails and something to separate the birds from the playground. These sails would kind of fit in with the harbor theme of the Splash Playground. Might be something to consider too, and it's something that's already in effect and used in an outdoor area. And then this is an entirely separate thing, but I know it was mentioned with the homeless in the bathrooms. And I want to say this, and this has nothing to do with Splash Pad, is when we relegate our community who happens to be homeless, and we eliminate their ability to use a bathroom, what we're saying is go find a corner to pee in. That's the reality of the situation. So sometimes we have to say there are risks with making bathrooms accessible, but to me as a community to say that we're not going to make bathrooms accessible is a greater problem, because what we're saying is go in public, or that could cause much worse issue, or go on yourself. And I just want to, and there's a human element to that, and saying we all need access to bathrooms. So. And also shopping and tourism. They need access to bathrooms too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Jim Hernblatt. Hi there.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Commission and the councils. I've been studying the black-crowned night herons and the snow egrets for the last 4 years. And I rescue a lot because they fall out of the trees. And some survive and some don't. Most of them don't because they're too young. My problem is right now there's no setback enough for the fledglings when they learn. Right now they're coming out of the trees learning how to fly. So they kind of fall into the fenced zone of the pool. And they go in and they learn to flap and do their things into the pool zone. So they lose that ability to learn how to fly because they've been up in the trees since birth, and it takes about 3 months before they can actually fly from the day that they hatch. So there's not enough room, per se, for them to do that. I spoke with the federal side of the Fish and Wildlife, and they had their conclusion is they need 125 feet from their nesting site out to where they can fly out to the water, because they can't go to the hotel, they can't go to the pool because they're right on the street. So there's no safe zone for them to come out of the tree and learn how to be on land, because the night herons eat gophers. So they're not just eating fish. So when they get on the ground and they look at the grass and they pick up little berries and bugs and stuff, they're learning how to do their thing. They've been coming there for years. And when the pool was there, they lived with it because it's just a pool. But now when you put the what's it called, the playground equipment in there, there's going to be a lot of poop on them, and someone's going to have to clean them on a regular basis because they land on anything that they can perch on. And I'm not opposed to the plan, but it either has to be scaled tremendously back or relocated, just because these birds, there's over 200 birds up there. There's 55 black heron nests with 2 adults, and they have up to 3 babies per season. And if the babies survive, they'll have another clutch because they're here from April through October every year. So I'm just speaking for them because they mean a lot to me, because everyone's taken as much space away from the wildlife and they start to diminish. And we don't want to have that problem. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
I got videos that I can show you of how they learn to do their growing up. I'm going to pass it on to the Parks and Rec Department so that you guys can, when you're bored, you can watch these guys have a little bit of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Amber Workman?
Hello, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and committee members. Thank you for having me here tonight. I think this project is a fantastic idea. My family, I actually have my kids here with me tonight and my husband. We are definitely in support of this project, and I wanted to just take a minute to thank staff as well as the design team for considering so many things, from the design elements. I think it's fantastic, to considering, a buffer for the birds. The one thing that I'll say is we have to protect the birds, but at the same time, I would urge you to consider all of the positive effects and benefits that a splash pad such as this would have on our community when making a decision. And I do agree that a buffer, and there are a lot of things that need to be discussed, but I would hope that wouldn't stop us from making a decision to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last speaker will be Brianna Lane.
Hello again. I just wanted to come and say that we are very much in support of this project. We think it's a fabulous idea. I grew up here. I'm 5th generation, so I know I've been to the wading pool before and have a lot of good memories. So it was very sad when it was closed for so long. But being in other cities where they do have splash pads, we always needed one. And so when hearing about this project, we were very, very excited to learn that the possibility was real and that it actually could happen. I do think that possibly looking into different shade options in addition, or maybe instead of the umbrellas, having a larger shade structures, like there's, I don't know what the fabric is, but sometimes they have them and they're actually quite nice and they're pretty easy to maintain, and it would provide more shade to help protect from the sun. But we love the idea.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And seeing no more public comment, having no more slips, it's back to the commission and the council. And this is for comments. I know many of you have kind of wrapped questions into comments this time, so don't feel a need to repeat if you have, if you've already said it. But let's start with Ms. Clark, and we'll just go down that way and then Over to Ms. Sanford.
Of course, we should just let kids skate the pool with their skateboards and solve all these problems. But as that's probably not feasible right now, just a couple things. I think that we probably maybe need to put some kind of educational signage for kids using the splash pad, saying that yes, this uses water, but it's recharged, and here's things you can do to save water at home. Might put our 2 cents in that we're using all this water, but we're conserving it too, and you can conserve at home. I look forward to seeing the bird video. And with the public bathroom, Pershing Park serves a lot of our temporarily undomiciled people, homeless people. Then they can use the bathrooms there. Doctors Without Borders, Without Walls goes there a couple times a week and serves them. So that segment of the population is well aware that there's bathrooms right there that are accessible to them. And by not encouraging bathroom use at this kids park, it's not saying that you have to use the street. It's just a place with children. It's not acceptable. And I'm a nurse. I work with a lot of that population, and there's illicit activities that we don't want in the bathroom with your 6-year-old. So it's not saying go pee on the street. It's just not with our children. That might be all I had to say, except for I would like to go on that walking tour of Santa Barbara. I don't know about that. Do I find it on Facebook?
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Commissioner Lesnar Buxton, did you have any?
I would just like to thank people for coming. I feel much better hearing about the accessibility. I've been to a splash pad in Seattle, and even me being a grown-up had a heck of a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
I just want to say I think this is a great idea. I love the design. Thank you all for all the work that's gone into it. And I really like the fact that it's something that children who don't yet know how to swim, or especially families, sometimes parents don't know how to swim, and it can be really intimidating to take your kid to a public pool if you don't feel like it's a safe place for either of you. So this is something that opens up opportunities for a lot of people, and it's walking distance from the west side. It's really exciting. So thank you.
I love the design as well. Being nostalgic, I would like to see a mushroom in there, but I know that's not going to happen. And thank you for the comments about the birds. I love just going by there and hearing them. They're great. And thank you, everybody, for your comments and support, again, for the design, and your comments to all of us as well. Thank you.
I love the idea. We use that park a lot. We use that area a lot. And I think it's going to be great for younger children. I think to interject with what Stacy said, there's a lot of children who, even though you live in Santa Barbara, they're not comfortable in the water or in the ocean. And I think this is a great, maybe a starting point for them to get more comfortable in the water. So I think that might even be part of it that nobody ever thought of, but I think it would be a huge asset to getting children more comfortable in the water. And also in relation to the birds, I think as Californians and as Santa Barbarans, we all live here because we love our beauty and our nature. And so I think we're certainly going to be able to come up with a solution where everybody's going to be happy. I hope so, at least. Thank you.
Ms. Sanford.
Yeah, I want to echo the other members' thoughts that this is an awesome project. I've just been smiling through this whole thing because I love the idea of providing this splash pad in this space. As far as balancing the need for the splash pad and community park with the existing bird community there, that's also really precious. I'm wondering if it's possible to provide some type of canopy over the, maybe a layering of canopies over the actual splash pad site, because, and possibly one that's large enough that could, shaking your head. Okay, well, because 125 feet is pretty much cutting into a lot of the splash pad. So if there was some type of way that our community member who really understands this bird population could at least, meet with the Parks Department to discuss, design options that would possibly be able to provide a flat surface for the birds and maybe shade or some UV protection for the splash pad users, and then minimizing maintenance of cleaning the bird poop if we could provide some sort of surface over it. But I don't know if that's idealistic. A few other points I want to make. As far as the recirculation of the water, I mean, I totally took it for granted that we'd be recirculating the water just because we are in such a dire drought. But I'd love to see signage and educational signage, just letting people know that, the city's being conscious about that and really highlighting our work to be, sustainable, forward-thinking city. And then with regards to the Chumash interpretive signage and just acknowledging our Chumash locals and natives and the heritage of this area, I'd love to see us kind of collaborate and reach out to leaders of the Chumash community and just make sure that they have a lot of opportunity to inform that signage. And then for the seating, I'm really excited to see seating included. And this is kind of a question, but would people be able to eat and drink within the splash pad? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that just because there's so many great restaurants in the harbor area. So if we could see tables and waste receptacles provided, so people can patronize our local businesses and eat that and be able to spend more time in the splash pad. And then the last point I'd like to touch on is kind of just an urban design comment. The bike path runs between the parking lot and the splash pad, and on your right side you just kind of have a sea of cars, and on the left side you just kind of have this empty space that's not really using anything, and then beyond that the birds, which is really cool. So if in designing that fence you can just make sure that it's kind of a focal point or somewhat of an engaging thing for people on the bike path to look at, that would be really awesome, because a lot of our locals and tourists just love to go to that bike path on the weekend, and so making sure that it's it looks cool for the people that are passing on the outside would be a nice touch. Thank you so much.
Mr. Aldana.
Yes, I also agree that it's an awesome idea and design. I did like the idea of a year-round. I know you touched on that in the beginning, and a year-round would be great. And regarding the birds, I guess we're going to have to come up with some type of happy medium with the birds. And maybe in that area, I know Eve, she touched on it, but we could have some type of shade structure, covered area. Sally, you mentioned about a arbor, that maybe that's the area for it, And then this way, it's covered, and there's more room for the birds, and then that's the possibly a solution for that. And also, one thing that wasn't mentioned, and I'm surprised you didn't mention it, Eve, is a bike rack. Yeah.
I think there are bike racks right in front of Los Baños, brand new ones.
Okay. So is that for Los Baños or with?
It's for the public.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Mr. Kadri.
I like the idea. And I agree with everybody else in the room. Just hope that, the birds are taken care of and the fecal matter doesn't spread into the water if it's being recycled and being water cannon in some kid's face. And I'm sure you guys will figure it out. But I like it. Thank you.
Okay. Mahoney.
Yes, I excuse me, echo what everyone's saying, and thank you to staff, and thank you for the public for coming too. This was a great presentation, and yes, I echo the sentiment that I hope we can take care of the birds too. Birds are very near and dear to my heart, so thank you.
I just want to remind everyone that I think when a project like this goes through the permitting process, there's no way that the birds are not they aren't going to get taken care of. They won't let us build this project without considering the birds and their habitat. And so and we can get creative in that way. But I mean, it's in the coastal. It requires a coastal development permit, which is even more extensive than your normal process. So hopefully you can be assured that by that process. The other thing I want to say is. Splash pads are one of the simplest, most joyous parks like you could ever imagine. If you don't understand the concept of a splash pad, and you've never been there. I think the closest one is in Oxnard or something. We've taken at the collection. We've taken our kids down there just to go to the splash pad. The amount of joy that a feature like this brings to children, and not even just small children, I mean, all the way up to 12, 13, is enormous. And we took our children to Vancouver last summer, and there are a series of splash pads throughout that city, which is cold, I'm guessing, most of the time. We were there in the summer, and we spent money to go to Vancouver, but it's like we didn't have to do anything except for go to the splash pads in that town. So I have a 7 and a 4-year-old, and that's all they wanted to do. From the simplest ones in the parks that just shot a few things to the more extensive ones. But they are just, and I think they do use a lot of water. And so I'm encouraged by this, and I think it's going to be used. I think it's going to take over Kids World as the most popular park in Santa Barbara, if this design comes to fruition. I mean, the kids being able to go on a lifeguard tower is like, if you have to keep that. That is amazing. They're going to be so excited. So thank you for this thoughtful design and incorporating the space that it's in. And I'm encouraged by the educational components, and I'm really excited. And whatever we can do to support, the process moving forward. Thank you.
Mr. Perry.
I too like the mushroom. It was a wonderful touch down there, and the arbor. Going back even farther, at that intersection of Cabrillo and Castillo was the hub of social life in Santa Barbara once upon a time. In the center of the street was a water fountain. So this brings that back to me of having a splash park in that area, because it is something that will benefit children, families, teenagers, adults. Anyone that wants to feel silly for 5 minutes can go run through there and walk down the boulevard and enjoy their time here. So, great job by staff. Wonderful plan. I look forward to seeing it becoming a reality.
Okay. We have a whole generation that hasn't got to run through a sprinkler, And that's a joy, like it's been said. So I think this is an important project. Now, for a bit of a reality check. It is a beautiful design, and if we can't do this design, my vote would be to scale it back and make a second water park, a splash pad in another park in our city. I think we could use more than one. I have a feeling we won't get all these elements through HLC. Just a thought. And the budget may not incorporate all of these wonders, which are pretty doggone cool. But it needs to go forward no matter what. The birds may not allow for all of these elements, but then let's take what we've got here and let's take it to Ortega Park. Let's get it out in some other areas, because these are they are a pretty important aspect of parks now, and we're missing it. And we're not going to build a pool. And hopefully we can build a couple of these for the price of one wading pool remodel, which we've seen. We also have the aspect that we can run them without lifeguards, like what are we down to now? Oak Park, and that's sad. When my kids were little, we had 3 wading pools, and now everybody's concentrated into one. So I'm excited about the project, but I'm a little, I have my concerns about the size and the scale, and I want to see it happen faster rather than slower. So, I would be willing to be flexible within this design to make it happen, and then carry it forward into other parks. So I hope that isn't too much of a bummer, but it is the reality of park planning, isn't it? We start big and we come down to reality. So Ms. Zachary, do you have some closing comments for us?
Chair Longstreet, commissioners and council members, just similar to what I said after the Bonnet Park item, your comments and considerations, the public comment tonight, we go back, take a look at where we are, do some more work with SWA. As
Chair Longstreet indicated, we do have to go to historic landmarks. Part of our process with all of these projects is really taking them forward at a concept level so that we don't get too in deep in terms of design without getting guidance both from you, from the public, and then also the design review boards. Justin mentioned it. This is in the coastal zone, but in addition to the birds, we're in the coastal zone, so it's a whole nother layer of permitting. We're sensitive to that, and we hope moving forward the energy and desire to see something like this goes in allows us to achieve some element of it in balance with all of the needs. We would like to be done with the design process by the end of the year. Again, similar calendar, similar schedule. Both the council and the commission will get to talk about capital projects in the near future. Now you have a context for the things that we think we'd like to try to move forward in the next couple of years. Chair Longstreet mentioned Ortega Park. That's the next joint meeting that you have at the end of August, where we're also trying to look at master planning that park, master planning Dwight Murphy, with the idea, with all these ideas, we'll be able to begin to move forward. And certainly the concept of a splash play area there is very much something that we've talked about too.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank the public for coming, and to remember that the Neighborhood Advisory Council meets monthly, and it's online, and it's a way to engage with neighborhood issues. We're here every month, and we'd love to hear from the public. And I want to thank both the Commission and the Neighborhood Advisory Council tonight. It was a good meeting, and I'm glad we did this together. So thank you, everybody. And with that, we are adjourned.